Chapter 4379. Entertain us? Qin Haoyan, Qin Li, and the other 6 were chatting happily, but when they heard this, they all turned to look at Qin Feiyang. They didn't know if they didn't look, but when they did, they were shocked. Seeing Qin Feiyang's eyes, an uneasy premonition rose in their hearts. At the same time, Emperor Hong and the others were also stunned at first, then they smiled and couldn't help but look at Qin Haoyan and the others with sympathy. Big brother, it's such a happy day, why don't we do those things that affect the mood? Qin Yi smiled embarrassedly. Realizing that something was wrong, he gradually began to retreat. Yes, big brother. We've already grown up, you don't need to worry anymore. Qin Xian also smiled flatteringly, ready to slip away at any time. Although so many years had passed, the scene of them training in the Black Tortoise world was still vivid in their minds. Those days were simply torture. Qin Xian, look at what you're saying. I'm the big brother. As the big brother, isn't it natural to worry about your younger siblings? Qin Feiyang chuckled. No need really. We're not young anymore, we can worry about our own matters. It's not easy for you to come back, so you should spend more time with Dad, Mom, and Grandpa. Qin Xian quickly waved his hand, glanced around and shouted, Run! Immediately, Qin Xian, Qin Yi, and Qin Yi the girl, turned around and fled. Qin Haoyan, Qin Li, Qin Ji, Qin Yun did not escape. Because they were very tactful. This is the Black Tortoise world, and Big Brother is the ruler of the Black Tortoise world. Can you escape? Sure enough. Qin Feiyang waved his hand, and the power of rule force descended, imprisoning Qin Xian and the other 2 in the void. Big brother, don't be so enthusiastic, we can't stand it. Qin Xian cried anxiously. Sister-in-law, can you control him? Qin Yi the twins also hurriedly asked the mermaid princess for help. Your big brother is doing this for your own good. The mermaid princess smiled. When the 3 heard this, they immediately despaired. If even sister-in-law didn't care about them, then who else could help them? Qin Haoyan looked at the 3 of them and coughed dryly. He looked at Qin Feiyang and said guiltily, Big brother, I'm the emperor of Great Qin now. You should give me some face. Qin Feiyang was slightly taken aback. He looked at Qin Haoyan playfully and nodded. Okay, I'll give you face. Thank you, big brother. Qin Haoyan was delighted. You're welcome. You are the emperor and have great responsibilities, so big brother will take special care of you. Qin Feiyang chuckled. When Qin Haoyan heard this, his body stiffened and the smile on his face disappeared. His heart was filled with bitterness. Wasn't this just asking for trouble? If he had known earlier, he would have kept his mouth shut. Don't worry, I won't kill you. At most, I'll just lose a layer of skin. Qin Feiyang looked at the 8 people and laughed. Then, with a wave of his hand, he swept up the 8 people and disappeared without a trace. These brats are doomed. Fatso laughed gloatingly. I can imagine their miserable days. Ling Yunfei nodded. You don't understand. It's their blessing to be trained by little Qin Zi personally. The white-eyed wolf glared at Fatso and Ling Yunfei and chuckled. Why don't I give you some guidance too? Don't. Our old bones can't stand the torment. Fatso and Ling Yunfei hurriedly waved their hands. What a joke. After being brothers for so many years, how could they not know this wolf cub's methods? To put it nicely, it was guidance. To put it bluntly, it was torture. Good for nothing. The white-eyed wolf despised them. However, these brats can be taught a good lesson. Fatso glanced at Lu Xiaofei, Lu Xiaojia, Situ Feiyang, and Ling Xiaoyan. Dad, don't trick us. Situ Feiyang immediately jumped up. Lu Xiaofei and Lu Xiaojia's faces also darkened. Were they trying to stir up trouble? However, Ling Xiaoyan seemed to be eager to give it a try. That was because she was still young and did not participate in that training. What do you mean by trick? This is for your own good. Fatso said angrily. That's right. Like Qin Li and the others, you will walk out of the Great Qin Empire sooner or later. You must train well. Lu Jing nodded, ignoring Lu Xiaofei and Lu Xiaojia's resentful gazes. I think we should forget about it. My daughter should just be a quiet young lady of a respectable family. Ling Yunfei said after hesitating for a while. Dad, I want to go and train. Ling Xiaoyan did not buy it. She looked at Ling Yunfei and said innocently. Ling Yunfei's expression froze. This little girl. How could she be so insensible? Couldn't she tell that Dad cared about her? He didn't want her to suffer? It's okay to go and train. Zhao Shuang'er was silent for a while and nodded. My dear wife, can you bear to do that? Ling Yunfei said hurriedly. Can't you tell that our daughter has grown up and is gradually yearning for the outside world? If we don't let her train well now, she will definitely suffer when she goes out. Zhao Shuang'er was helpless. Ling Yunfei heard and looked at Ling Xiaoyan. He could not bear to part with her. Swoosh. At this moment, Qin Feiyang was back. Lu Xiaofei, Lu Xiaojia, and Situ Feiyang became nervous. They kept praying in their hearts that he would not do anything to them. Qin Feiyang looked at the three of them and said with a smile, as an uncle, I will definitely not favor one and discriminate against the other. I will only think of my younger brothers and sisters and neglect you, my nephews and nieces. Uncle, dear uncle. It's okay. We don't care. Situ Feiyang smiled flatteringly. Yes, yes, yes. Even if you really neglect us, we won't say anything. Lu Xiaofei also hurriedly nodded in agreement. Qin Feiyang looked at the two of them in amusement and said, I didn't mention you guys just now because your way of training is different from theirs. What? Different? Is it more brutal? Lu Xiaofei's face turned pale with fright. No. Qin Haoyan and the others are my younger brothers and sisters. I will definitely not be merciful to them. But you guys are all juniors. Naturally, I will take special care of you. Qin Feiyang said with a smile. Please don't mention the word special care. I'm panicking when I hear it. Situ Feiyang hurriedly exclaimed. Special care? It was definitely not a good thing. You two are the most talkative. Qin Feiyang glared at Situ Feiyang and Lu Xiaofei. With a wave of his hand, the two of them disappeared without a trace. This is the result of talking too much. The one who talks the most will receive the most vicious beatings. The white-eyed wolf bared his teeth. Truly a bunch of idiots who don't know how lucky they are. Madman shook his head, not worried about these little guys at all. He looked at Qin Feiyang and asked, Boss, how do you plan to train them? I threw Qin Haoyan and the others into the desert of death. Lu Xiaofei and Situ Feiyang, these two brats, I did want to be merciful, but there was no other way. They talked too much, so I also threw them into the desert of death to accompany Qin Haoyan and the others. Qin Feiyang said. Everyone looked at each other and couldn't help but shake their heads and laugh. Indeed, as the white-eyed wolf said, the one who talks the most will receive the most vicious beatings. They asked for it. As for Xiaojia and Xiaoyan, Qin Feiyang looked at the two girls and said with a smile, You two can go to my Black Tortoise World's holy ground. That is the place where the Black Tortoise World's geniuses gather. It will definitely be helpful for your growth. Moreover, I will instruct the Holy Ground's manager to take good care of you. Lu Xiaojia sighed in relief and quickly thanked Huang Xiaolong. Fortunately, she didn't talk too much like those two guys before, otherwise she would be in trouble. Qin Feiyang waved his hand, and the two disappeared. Then he secretly informed Pai Lupi and Theta Wang to give them the best resources and treatment. Of course, they also need to temper themselves properly. After all, as Zhao Shuang'er said before, if they don't experience some hardships, they won't understand the sinister nature of people's hearts. Sooner or later, they will suffer a great loss outside. These little guys are really blessed. Fortunately, they have you. Otherwise, I don't know how many detours they would have to take. Emperor Hong chuckled. Emperor Chun and the others nodded. At this time, another group of people came over. They were Tantai Li, Qin Rishuang, Dan Wangkai, Lei Bao, Bloodshilin, and so on. Madam Mississippi Yi Shu and the other elders of the main pagoda immediately greeted them. Dan Wangkai. Several young men and women also hurriedly ran towards Dan Wangkai Chao. These people were Wang Zicheng and the others. The reunion of old friends was naturally a joyous thing. Lei Bao, Bloodshilin, and other fierce beasts were also very familiar with everyone. As for Tantai Li, Emperor Hong had now let go of her and also treated her as a family member. And his attitude toward Qin Rishuang was also like his own sister. Because Qin Rishuang and Emperor Hong were half-siblings. It was just that Emperor Hong couldn't accept this in the past. And Tantai Li and Qin Rishwang had to call Ji Tianyue mother and grandmother. Of course, Ji Tianyue had stayed in the Black Tortoise realm before, and was no stranger to the mother and daughter. Qin Feiyang smiled and said, taking advantage of this rare opportunity, I also want to announce a piece of good news. What good news? Everyone looked at him suspiciously. Big cousin, the inner demons are not dead. Qin Feiyang smiled. What? Grandpa and the others suddenly stood up. In these years, the greatest pain of the Lu family was Lu Jiejin's sacrifice. And they often thought of this poor child. But they didn't expect that Qin Feiyang would actually tell them today that the child was not dead. Feiyang, is this true? Don't joke with us. Lu Qiuyu also looked at Qin Feiyang, and said in a deep voice, Mother, would I dare to joke about this? They are all still alive, and their strength is not inferior to mine. Qin Feiyang smiled and said, Then where are they? Hurry up and call them here. Lu Jing urged. They didn't come back. Qin Feiyang shook his head. They didn't come back? Why? Everyone was puzzled. They have a mission, but I promise you that the next time I come back, they will come back with me. Qin Feiyang said. I really miss them. Lu Qiuyu sighed. Lu Jiejin was her nephew. She also treated the inner demons as her own children. And the sacrifice of the two back then was for Qin Feiyang, so she always felt sorry for them in her heart. But now it was all good. Both of them were not dead, and the knot in her heart that had been buried for many years could finally be untied. Chapter 4380. Qin Haoyan and the others were very bitter, but the atmosphere in the tea garden was very harmonious and there was endless laughter. Qin Feiyang also took out the Bodhi fruit and divine wine to entertain everyone. He usually couldn't bear to part with the Bodhi fruit. A moment later, Lu Qiuyu, Tantai Li Luo Qianxue, and Lu Yin wanted to cook personally. Mermaid Princess, Zhuo Xiaoxian, Fire Dance, Zhao Shuang, Qin Rishwang, and Run Wushuang didn't dare to continue sitting. They all went to help. Soon, only a group of men were left in the tea garden. And Ji Tianyue, with her seniority, who dared to let her do it personally. Originally, with Tantai Li's seniority, she didn't need to do it personally, but no one could persuade her. For the entire day, no one talked about anything else. They put down everything to accompany their family and friends. During this period, Pei Daisen, Pei Hongyu, Zhao Tailai, Tang Hai, Pai Lupi, Theta Wang, Pei Tianhong, the five-clawed golden dragon, and others all woke up from their seclusion, including the 6,000 secret guards. After all, they were Qin Feiyang's family. No matter what, they had to come out and get to know them. Looking at these people, Emperor Hong and the others were very gratified. It turned out that there were so many people fighting with Qin Feiyang. As for how strong their cultivation was, it didn't seem that important at this moment. There was only concern for each other in their eyes. A day passed just like that. With the time array, Qin Feiyang wasn't in a hurry at all. 10,000 years was enough for him to reunite with his family and friends. Early the next morning, in a courtyard, the king, Ji Tianjun, and Ji Tianyue sat around a stone table, with a pot of hot tea on the table. Sister, that's the general situation. Ji Tianjun smiled slightly. Impressive. I didn't expect them to go to the Divine Kingdom, and destroy the Sea Clan and Beast Clan. Ji Tianyue couldn't calm down for a long time. That's right. If I didn't see it with my own eyes, who would believe that they could shake such a powerful Divine Kingdom with just a few of them? The king shook his head and sighed. It seems that I've been worried for nothing all these years. Ji Tianyue smiled bitterly. He had thought that the Divine Kingdom and the Sky Cloud Realm would fight to the death, but he hadn't expected that the human race, the divine race, and the purple gold divine dragon race would be persuaded by Qin Feiyang to join forces against the central dynasty. You can rest assured now. The king smiled faintly. Yes. Ji Tianyue nodded. This time his heart was finally at ease. Because this was the result she had been waiting for. Heavenly Lord Ji took a sip of tea and said with a smile, but to be honest, it's all thanks to Long Qin keeping you in the Great Qin Empire. Otherwise, the situation might be different. That's true. If you had returned to the Divine Kingdom, The sea beasts and the beast race would not have let you off, let alone the central dynasty. At that time, you will become a bargaining chip in their hands. At that time, our situation will become even more passive. The monarch nodded. This is the so-called man proposes, God disposes. Tianhua shook her head and smiled. No, no, no. This is the result of man's calculation. Although you didn't reveal anything to Longchen back then, Longchen saw through your thoughts at a glance, so he deliberately kept you in the Great Qin Empire. Sometimes, we have to admit that these little guys are really powerful. It seems that nothing can escape their eyes. The king smiled bitterly. Even Father praised them so much. It seems that their performance in the divine kingdom is extraordinary. Tianhua chuckled. I'm ashamed of myself. The king shook his head. Now he had no choice but to admit that he was old. What about the central dynasty? Is it easy to deal with them? Tianhua asked. She knew nothing about the central dynasty. The king and Heavenly Lord Ji looked at each other and shook their heads. It's hard to say. Maybe they will face a battle. What are you talking about? It's early in the morning. At this time, Qin Feiyang walked over and looked at the three with a smile. You came at the right time. Come here. The king waved his hand. Qin Feiyang walked over. Heavenly Lord Ji poured a cup of tea and handed it to Qin Feiyang. Thank you, uncle. Qin Feiyang chuckled. The corner of Heavenly Lord Ji's mouth twitched. It seemed that this title couldn't be changed. Tianhua looked at Qin Feiyang and said in amusement, You're good, kid. You can even get Lord Jiu's tea trees. You know? Qin Feiyang was stunned. Yes. Just now father and big brother told me everything that happened in the divine kingdom. Tianhua nodded. Ha! Qin Feiyang laughed dryly, sniffed the tea, and said, Actually Lord Jiu is very kind. Kind? Tianhua smiled bitterly. As a member of the Purple Gold Divine Dragon clan, how could she not know Lord Jiu's temper? He was indeed good to people, but if you had any ideas about his tea trees, even God wouldn't let you. The king put down the teacup and looked at Qin Feiyang seriously. There were too many people yesterday, so we couldn't ask. Now tell me, how strong is that sovereign? Very strong. At the mention of the sovereign of the divine kingdom, Qin Feiyang's heart sank. How strong? The three of them were surprised. To be able to make Qin Feiyang say these two words, it was definitely not an ordinary kind of frightening. When I found him in the Nether King's Hell, I saw that he couldn't use the power of origin, so I thought that with my current strength, I should at least be able to compete with him. However, I didn't expect that he also mastered the ultimate meaning of the law of life and death, and all the ultimate meanings. Qin Feiyang said. What? The three of them were surprised. At that time, he said that only by comprehending the ultimate meaning of the law of life and death can one be considered a true sovereign. Of course. Although this was somewhat unexpected, it was still acceptable. After all, he is the sovereign of the divine kingdom. However, the last killing technique he used was completely beyond my imagination. Qin Feiyang said. What killing technique? The three of them stared at Qin Feiyang nervously. I don't know either. However, I am certain that this killing technique was evolved from the law of death. However, its power far surpassed the ultimate meaning. In fact, even the ultimate meaning of the law of life and death is as insignificant as an ant in front of this killing technique. At that time, I activated 3,000 incarnations and all the ultimate meanings, but in the end I couldn't block it at all. If not for Ice Dragon's timely intervention, I'm afraid I would have died in the Nether King's Hell. Qin Feiyang said solemnly. So strong? The three of them were dumbfounded. They simply couldn't accept this. Yes. Against him, I couldn't fight back at all. And because of this killing technique, we are now wondering if there is a new realm above the sovereign realm. Qin Feiyang said. A new realm? The three of them frowned. They had never heard of it before. They had always thought that mastering all the ultimate meanings was already the strongest existence. I have already asked Long Chun and Long Qin to inquire about this matter from Ice Dragon. Hopefully there will be some results. Qin Feiyang shook his head. He didn't dare to have too much hope. After all, Ice Dragon's temper was obvious to all. He might not tell Long Chen and his sister. I really didn't expect him to be so strong. If he has the origin force, wouldn't we have no chance of winning at all? The monarch was worried. That's why Dong Zhengyang purposely told everyone to come back and not leave any regrets. I think Dong Zhengyang has already seen our future. However, no matter what the final result is, I will do my best to protect the Divine Kingdom and the Sky Cloud Realm. Qin Feiyang said with a smile. You can still smile? The monarch couldn't help but roll his eyes. He was almost worried to death. What else can we do? Qin Feiyang smiled bitterly. Heavenly Lord Ji pondered for a while and looked at the three of them. Now we only have one path, and that is to get rid of the Central Dynasty before the god returns to the Divine Kingdom. Get rid of the Central Dynasty first. The monarch murmured and nodded. That makes sense. The sea race and the beast race have already been destroyed. The biggest threat now is the Central Dynasty. As long as we can get rid of the Central Dynasty, when the Divine Kingdom's god returns, he will be a general without an army. Perhaps we can still fight. I think so too. However, it won't be easy to get rid of the Central Dynasty. Qin Feiyang sighed. What's wrong? Could it be that you have already investigated the Central Dynasty's foundation? The monarch was surprised. Not completely. Just a part of it. Qin Feiyang shook his head. Then tell us quickly. The monarch urged. This. Qin Feiyang hesitated for a moment. Still keeping it a secret from us? The monarch raised his eyebrows. It's not a secret. It's just that we don't want to put pressure on you. Qin Feiyang smiled bitterly. Was there a need to keep it a secret with their current relationship? It doesn't look good. Heavenly Lord Ji looked at the monarch. Otherwise, Qin Feiyang wouldn't be so hesitant. The monarch took a deep breath and looked at Qin Feiyang. Tell me. I'm not that weak. If you tell me now, I can be mentally prepared in advance. Okay. According to our preliminary investigation, the Divine Kingdom's Death Army has a total of 10 teams. Qin Feiyang nodded and explained the situation in a simple and clear manner. What? After hearing this, the three of them suddenly stood up and their faces were filled with shock. This was too terrifying. 10 teams. Even if each team only had 10,000 people, that was still a total of 100,000 people. What did that mean? Right now the God race, the human race, and the purple gold divine dragon race. Even if they combined the inheritances Qin Feiyang had given them, they were just a drop in the ocean compared to the Death Army. Besides, the 10 teams of the Death Army might add up to more than 100,000 people. Not to mention the dominator of the Divine Kingdom. The Death Army wasn't something they could fight against. They had never thought that the situation they were facing right now would be so bad. Actually, it's not that we don't have a chance of winning. 3,000 incarnations are our biggest trump card. Whether it's me, the two of you, or Lord Jiu, we can all fight against 3,000 incarnations. Qin Feiyang said. That may be the case, but the Death God army is simply too large. Grandpa and Grandma have 15 people. Including me, the Heavenly Lord, and you, there are only 18 people in total. Even if we include the inner demons, we only have 19 people. The monarch said. Chapter 4381. And the Demon Ancestor. Qin Feiyang smiled. Demon Ancestor? Okay. We will count the Demon Ancestor. Including the Demon Ancestor, we only have 20 people. Even if we all activate 3,000 incarnations, we will only have 60,000. 60,000. Even if the Death God Legion only has 100,000 people, we are still far behind. And what if there are more than 100,000 people in the Death God Legion? The king frowned. There was no hope of victory at all. I have also thought about this. From the current situation, the gap between our overall strength and the Death God Legion is indeed too big. But don't forget, on our side we still have the strongest battle soul, and there are more than one or two of them. Qin Feiyang smiled. The king was taken aback. That's right. Qin Feiyang, Mermaid Princess, Lu Jiajin, Mu Qing, Mu Tianyang, Dong Zhengyang, and the Demon Ancestor all have the strongest battle soul. There are also Lin Yi, Qin Batian, and Lu Xingyang. These strongest battle souls, especially the combat-type battle souls. Once all evolve, they can unleash the power to destroy the world. Moreover, Frenzy, White-Eyed Wolf, and Long Chen's battle soul are also not to be underestimated. At that time, if these people join forces, there might be hope. The battle souls that have yet to evolve are only the two ancestors' Reincarnation Eye and Destruction Eye, as well as Yi's Oblivion Eye. The other half of Reincarnation Eye and Destruction Eye have been found, and they are now in Mount Supreme. As long as we get Mount Supreme's consent, we can merge them. However, the Reincarnation Eye is still a mystery. Qin Feiyang frowned. Is there any news about the Reincarnation Eye? Heavenly Lord Ji asked. No one knew the lethality of the Reincarnation Eye, but as the number one battle soul, it must be extremely terrifying. Yes. Dong Zhengyang mentioned it to the White-Eyed Wolf. The other half of the Eye of Reincarnation is related to the dragons. Qin Feiyang said. Dragons? The three of them were stunned. Yes. But he didn't know which dragons it was. The ancient realm has a race of dragons, and the Sky Cloud realm also has a race of dragons. The purple gold divine dragons of the Divine Kingdom are also considered dragons. Qin Feiyang said. You can rule out the possibility of the purple gold divine dragon clan. We don't have the Reincarnation Eye in our clan. After all, if such a fighting soul was really in the purple gold divine dragon clan, how could we not know about it? Heavenly Lord Ji said. Qin Feiyang glanced at Heavenly Lord Ji and said, then only the dragons from the ancient world and the Sky Cloud realm are left. I heard that the dragons of the ancient world were destroyed by you. The possibility is not high. I think this person should be one of the dragons hiding in the Sky Cloud realm. The king analyzed. If this person is really one of the dragons in the Sky Cloud realm, why is there no news at all? Besides, Long Chen didn't mention anything about it. Qin Feiyang frowned. Could it be that Long Chen is deliberately hiding something from us? Heavenly Lord Ji asked. Hearing this, Ji Tianyue shook her head and said, I don't think so. I've met Long Chen before. He's a straightforward person. With Long Chen's character, of course he can be trusted. But what if there's another reason? Heavenly Lord Ji asked. If it weren't for Long Chen's help, Qin Feiyang wouldn't have been able to obtain so many ultimate profound meanings. From this point, one could see how noble and great this person was. Why don't we ask Dong Zhengyang again? The king pondered for a moment and asked. He definitely won't tell us. If he wanted to, he would have told us himself. I don't know if the Eye of Destiny is lucky or unlucky to have this fighting soul. Qin Feiyang shook his head and smiled wryly. He knew everything, but he didn't dare to say it out loud. He could only keep it to himself. If he reveals too many secrets, he might really be punished by the heavens. We have to understand this as well. Ji Tianyue smiled. Qin Feiyang the king and Heavenly Lord Ji nodded. Anyway, no matter what fate was, they just had to listen to Dong Zhengyang's arrangements from now on. Qin Feiyang suddenly slapped his head and turned to Ji Tianyue. Ancestor, I have a question. Can you tell me honestly? What question? Ji Tianyue was suspicious. Qin Feiyang asked. Is Yun Xiang the reincarnation of the human emperor? What? Yun Xiang is the reincarnation of the human emperor. The king and Heavenly Lord Ji were shocked. Hearing this question, Ji Tianyue was also stunned and looked at Qin Feiyang strangely. Is there a problem? Qin Feiyang didn't understand. Ji Tianyue asked curiously. Why do you think Yun Xiang is the reincarnation of the human emperor? Qin Feiyang said, because you extracted the three ultimate profound meanings and gave them to him. Yun Xiang and the Master Jura are both your disciples. Logically speaking, you shouldn't favor one and discriminate against the other, so we came up with this bold guess. You? Ji Tianyue was stunned. Yes, senior brother, the white-eyed wolf, the blood ancestor, the feather emperor, and the little rabbit all thought so. Qin Feiyang nodded. Looks like this trick of mine is quite effective. Ji Tianyue chuckled. Setting up a trap? Qin Feiyang was shocked. What did she mean? The king and Heavenly Lord Ji were also confused. That's right. I gave all three ultimate truths to Yun Xiang in order to confuse him, Qin Wentian said. Because at that time, I was going to return to the Divine Kingdom alone. And I didn't know that you would reconcile with the Purple Gold Divine Dragon clan one day in the future, so I deliberately set up this trap. Ji Tianyue explained. Then who did you set up this trap for? Qin Feiyang was suspicious. Ji Tianyue smiled bitterly and turned to look at the king and Heavenly Lord Ji. Against us. The king and his son were stunned. Yes. My purpose is to lead you to think that Yin Xiang is the reincarnation of the human emperor, just like Qin Feiyang and the others. Because Yin Xiang has been fighting with the geniuses of the Divine Kingdom, his strength will attract your attention sooner or later. At that time, you will definitely investigate him. Ji Tianyue nodded. Little sister, why did you do this? Heavenly Lord Ji frowned. After all this time, it turned out to be a trap. Ji Tianyue pondered for a while, then looked up at the sky and said with a smile, because I want to protect the real reincarnation of the human emperor. What? The three of them looked at her in shock. Was there really a reincarnation of the human emperor? Yes. The reincarnation of the human emperor has returned a long time ago. But in this world, except for me and the human emperor's sword, no one knows who his reincarnation is. Ji Tianyue smiled. The human emperor's sword knows? Qin Feiyang was stunned. Yes. Ji Tianyue nodded and said with a smile. The human emperor's sword was made by the human emperor and integrated with his blood essence, so as long as it meets the reincarnation of the human emperor, it will be able to sense it. Damn it. That bastard, he has been hiding it from me. Qin Feiyang said angrily. He is the same as me. To protect the reincarnation of the human emperor. Ji Tianyue smiled, then looked at the monarch and Heavenly Lord, and said apologetically, Father, brother, I'm really sorry. If I knew that you would reconcile with the Sky Cloud realm, I wouldn't have to go through so much trouble, because I was really worried that you would kill the reincarnation of the human emperor again if you knew about it. You little girl, I really don't know what charm this human emperor has to make you do so much for him. Heavenly Lord Ji was very dissatisfied. She actually sacrificed 3 ultimate mysteries to set up a trap. Because he is my husband. Ji Tianyue smiled slightly. This simple sentence represented her unwavering feelings for the human emperor. Sigh. The monarch and Heavenly Lord Ji couldn't help but sigh. Qin Feiyang asked. Then who is the reincarnation of the human emperor? As a descendant, I should also have the right to know. When the time comes, you will naturally know. Ji Tianyue smiled. Qin Feiyang was stunned. Even now, she still wanted to hide it from him? Little sister, you don't think that father and I will still kill him, do you? Heavenly Lord Ji also had a look of dissatisfaction. Are we still family? No. Because his current identity is a bit special, I can't say it. Ji Tianyue's expression was very difficult. Special identity. Qin Feiyang and the other 2 looked at each other. Why did it sound more and more mysterious? Do we know him? The monarch asked. However, Ji Tianyue remained silent about this question. The monarch was helpless. Qin Feiyang and Heavenly Lord Ji were also helpless. Suddenly, Heavenly Lord Ji rolled his eyes and looked at Qin Feiyang, saying, Kid, don't you know about the human emperor sword? Let's go and interrogate it. What if it doesn't say? Qin Feiyang asked. If it doesn't say, we will beat it. Let's see if its mouth is harder than our fists. Heavenly Lord Ji's eyes flashed with a cold light. Brother. Ji Tianyue immediately glared at Heavenly Lord Ji. Just kidding, just kidding. Heavenly Lord Ji smiled embarrassedly. He sighed in his heart. She even dared to be fierce to her brother now. This married girl was really like water that had been poured out. Anyway, this is the end of it. Ji Tianyue snorted coldly, looked up at the rising sun in the sky, and said to the 3 of them, You guys talk. I'll go and make some breakfast. I'll go and help. The monarch also got up. You'll help? Ji Tianyue was stunned and asked suspiciously. Do you know how to? You can learn if you don't know how to. The monarch laughed. In fact, he just wanted to spend more time with Ji Tianyue and relive the joy of father and daughter together. Okay. Ji Tianyue nodded and once again cast a warning look at Qin Feiyang and Heavenly Lord Ji. Don't make trouble for the human emperor sword. After that, she walked to the backyard with the monarch. After watching the two leave, Heavenly Lord Ji immediately looked at Qin Feiyang and asked, "Kid, what do you think should be understood by the special thing she said?" Special is special. How else can you understand it? Qin Feiyang was speechless. There are many aspects of being special. You can use your imagination. I'm really curious. Who is the reincarnation of the human emperor? Heavenly Lord Ji rubbed his cheeks. Ancestor didn't even want to say whether we know him or not. How do you want me to use my imagination? Qin Feiyang smiled bitterly. No matter how rich his imagination was, it was useless. Besides, who didn't want to know? It could be said that he wanted to know more than anyone else. But what could he do? If the reincarnation of the human emperor was someone they knew, they could also narrow down the scope. But now Ji Tianyue didn't reveal anything. How could they find him in the vast sea of people? Chapter 4382. In the following days, Qin Feiyang put down everything and focused on accompanying his family and friends, living a truly carefree life. As they understood the Black Tortoise world, their hearts were filled with shock. The current Black Tortoise world was many times bigger than the Great Qin Empire. With their cultivation, it would probably take them a few hundred years to explore the entire Black Tortoise world. At the same time, the overall strength of the Black Tortoise world also shocked them. Compared to the Sky Cloud world and the Divine Kingdom, the overall strength of the Black Tortoise world was indeed nothing. However, compared to the Great Qin Empire and the Forgotten Continent, the Black Tortoise world was not just a little bit stronger. Even the ancient world could not compare to the Black Tortoise world. One day many years later, the mystic Tharch and Lu Qiuyu returned to the Devil's Land. Seeing Qin Feiyang sitting alone in the tea garden with his head lowered and thinking about something, the mystic Tharch quietly landed behind Qin Feiyang. "Kid, what are you thinking about? Why are you so engrossed?" The mystic Tharch patted Qin Feiyang's shoulder and smiled. Qin Feiyang was indeed so engrossed that he was shocked by the mystic Tharch. He hurriedly got up and turned to look at the two. He smiled and said, "Nothing." "Is that so? Why do I feel that you are hiding something from us?" The mystic Tharch sat opposite Qin Feiyang with a trace of suspicion in his eyes. Qin Feiyang poured tea and shook his head with a smile. "How would I dare to hide anything from you?" The mystic Tharch looked at his son in amusement and said, "Since you have nothing to hide from us, then tell me, why did you ask us to come to the Black Tortoise world?" "Didn't I tell you before? I just wanted to let you see the current Black Tortoise world. How is it? The current Black Tortoise world is alright, right?" Qin Feiyang smiled and asked. "Alright. It is much stronger than the Great Qin Empire." The mystic Tharch nodded and was filled with emotions. The Black Tortoise world was developing too quickly, completely beyond his imagination. However, he immediately said unhappily, "Kid, don't change the topic. Do you think that we are old and senile?" No. Qin Feiyang hurriedly waved his hand. "Can you stop asking questions?" Lu Qiuyu glared at the mystic Tharch unhappily. "Are you the only one who cares about him? I'm just concerned about him, okay?" Faced with Lu Qiuyu's responsibility, the mystic Tharch was helpless. He looked at Qin Feiyang and said, "From the moment I saw you rushing us to the Black Tortoise domain, I knew that there was something going on. What secrets could there be?" Qin Feiyang shook his head. "What secrets? I'll have to ask you. Actually, we also know that you don't want to tell us because you don't want us to worry. But, you have to understand us. We are your parents. As parents, how can we not care about our son?" The mystic Tharch sighed. Qin Feiyang was silent for a long time. He looked up at his parents and sighed. "Alright, I'll tell you. Actually, Ice Dragon only gave us 3 days to come back this time." "Ice Dragon? 3 days?" The couple was bewildered. How did this matter have anything to do with Ice Dragon? Qin Feiyang smiled and said, "The matter in the Sky Cloud realm is not over yet. We still have to go back. However, you two elders can rest assured that your lives will not be in danger." "Really?" the mystic Tharch asked. Why did it sound so unreliable? "Really?" Qin Feiyang nodded. "You brat, You only know how to comfort us. The mystic Varch was helpless. Qin Feiyang smiled embarrassedly. Forget it. I won't ask anymore. Anyway, there's not much truth in asking you. However, you have to promise me that you will come back alive. Your mother and I, as well as everyone else, will be waiting for you in the Great Qin Empire. The mystic Tharch said. He was also a sensible person. With his strength and ability, facing the problem that Qin Feiyang was facing now, he couldn't help at all. Therefore, he could only silently support him from behind. Thank you, father. Qin Feiyang's heart ached. In this life he owed too many people. For example, the mermaid princess. For a long time, the mermaid princess had followed him outside. Although she was by his side, the time he spent with her was very little. He couldn't even help her realize a simple wish like having a child. He didn't know how long this kind of life would last. He really wanted to end it quickly and make up for what he owed the mermaid princess. Even the mermaid princess was like this, let alone the two parents in front of him. From the moment he was expelled from the imperial capital, he rarely spent time with his parents, let alone be filial to them for a day. As the saying goes, raise a child to guard against old age. But now, it was still him who had been worrying his parents. He really felt that he had let his parents down. Don't think too much. You're different from ordinary children. Because you carry a heavy burden. As for us, we're still young and can take care of ourselves. You can rest assured and work hard outside. Wuxia smiled. Different from ordinary children, Qin Feiyang murmured. His heart was extremely bitter. He really wanted to be an ordinary person who could ignore everything, be carefree, and be free. But this was simply an extravagant hope for him. Time passed day by day. In the following period of time, no one came to ask any more questions. In fact, everyone was well aware of the situation. Qin Feiyang definitely wouldn't stay in Great Qin forever, and he definitely had something important to do. This time, he returned to Great Qin purely to visit everyone. In fact, it was enough to have this intention, because at least it proved. No matter when, Qin Feiyang never forgot them, and he always worried about them in his heart. Finally, Black Tortoise Realm. 10,000 years passed. These 10,000 years, whether it was for Qin Feiyang, Emperor Hong, Wuxia, and the others, it was like an instant. Time passed too quickly. Imperial capital. Above the autumn rain building. Qin Feiyang, Madman White-Eyed Wolf, Mermaid Princess, Zhuo Xiaoxian, Fire Dance Li Feng, and the others stood together. Opposite. Emperor Hong, Grandpa, Lu Zheng, Fatso, and the others stood together. Boss, can't you stay for a few more days? Fatso asked reluctantly. There's still a long way to go. Qin Feiyang smiled slightly. Sigh. I know you're a busy person, but I didn't expect you to be so busy. Fatso shook his head and sighed. There's no banquet in the world that doesn't end, but don't worry. Next time. The next time I come back, I'll never leave again. Qin Feiyang smiled. Don't say that too early. Ling Yunfei shook his head. Who knew if there would be something else the next time he came back? Qin Feiyang looked at Ling Yunfei, then at Emperor Xian, Emperor Hong, Emperor Chen, Grandpa Lu Zheng, and the others. He couldn't help but clench his fists. Not to mention anything else, just for these people in front of him, he had to defeat the Central Dynasty, eradicate the Divine Kingdom's ruler, and give everyone a peaceful era. Even if he had to pay with his life. Huff. Taking a deep breath, Qin Feiyang waved his hand, and a time array appeared, emitting a mighty aura, and fell into the back mountain of the Varch Palace. If it were any other time, looking at this time array, everyone would definitely be happy. But at this moment, their hearts were all filled with the sadness of parting. Qin Feiyang took out an interspatial ring that he had prepared long ago. Inside, there were 1,000 inheritances of ultimate laws, as well as many inheritances of law miniatures and ordinary ultimate laws, as well as elixirs to unlock the door of potential. With a wave of his hand, the interspatial ring fell in front of Qin Haotian. Qin Haotian raised his arm and slowly grabbed the interspatial ring. I'll leave everything to you. Qin Feiyang smiled. Hearing this, Qin Haotian couldn't help but tighten his grip on the interspatial ring. He knew. Qin Feiyang had not only handed him these divine items, but also the safety of his family and the entire Great Qin. This responsibility was very heavy, but he would work hard to carry it, so that his big brother, who was fighting outside, would not have any worries. He looked up at Qin Feiyang, trying to control his emotions, and said with a smile, "Don't worry, go." This was a promise between brothers. It was also a promise between men. A promise was worth 1,000 gold. In these years of training in the Black Tortoise world, whether it was Qin Haoyan, Qin Li Lu Xiaojia, and the others, they had all improved by leaps and bounds. The improvement of their cultivation was only secondary. The most important thing was their character, and responsibility. No matter how strong their cultivation was, if they didn't have a sense of responsibility and good character, in Qin Feiyang's eyes, they were just third-rate people. Qin Feiyang smiled. With Qin Haoyan around, he could indeed leave with peace of mind. He walked to the mystic Dvarch couple, knelt in front of them, and said with his head lowered, "This child kneels and says goodbye." At this moment, the emotions that Lu Qiuyu had been trying hard to control burst out like a flood, and she instantly burst into tears. "Didn't we agree not to cry? Just let these children go in peace." The mystic Dvarch comforted. There were also tears in his eyes. Lu Qiuyu hurriedly wiped away her tears and helped Qin Feiyang up. She grabbed Qin Feiyang's hand tightly and said, "We will wait for you to come back." Qin Feiyang nodded and gently broke free. He resolutely turned around, opened a space-time tunnel, and left with the mermaid princess and the others without looking back. "You must come back," Lu Qiuyu shouted. Her collapsed emotions made her voice hoarse. "I will," Qin Feiyang, who was in the space-time tunnel, muttered. At this moment, tears also flowed down her cheeks. Chapter 4383. Demon Dragon Island. When Qin Feiyang's group arrived above the island, there were already people waiting there. The demon ancestor, demon dragon Dong Xingyang, Mu Tianyang, Mu Qing, Lin Yi, Xiaoyuan, and the other 54 divine generals. "Morning." Mu Qing waved his hand to greet them. "Morning." Qin Feiyang forced a smile, and the tears in the corner of his eyes had not dried yet. "What's wrong? Can't bear to part with them?" Mu Qing asked. Qin Feiyang turned his head to look in the direction of the imperial capital and sighed. "The people I care about are all here. It would be strange if I could bear to part with them." "Then give us the Black Tortoise realm, the law of life and death, and the eye of heaven. We will help you complete your mission. You can stay in Great Qin and enjoy life." Mu Qing bared his teeth. Qin Feiyang couldn't help but roll his eyes when he heard this. What a beautiful dream. Although he often said that he would rather use his cultivation and divine items in exchange for a peaceful life, when faced with this problem, he had to abide by the cruel truth. To live a peaceful life, the first thing one needed was overwhelming strength. If one didn't have enough strength as a foundation, even if one was given this opportunity, they might not be able to live a peaceful life. "Who else is not here?" Qin Feiyang glanced at the crowd and asked Xiaoyuan. Xiaoyuan said, "Only Wang Xiaojie and Qin Chen are not here now." Qin Feiyang pondered for a while and smiled. "It's good that the two of them are not here. With them guarding Great Qin and the Forgotten Continent, I will be more at ease." "But this disciple is worried about you, master." As a space-time passage appeared, Wang Xiaojie and Qin Chen descended in the sky. "I thought you guys wouldn't come." Qin Feiyang smiled. "You helped us open the door of potential, gave us the inheritance of the ultimate profound, and taught us with all your heart. Now that you are in danger, how can we not come?" Qin Chen said. Although his words were very plain and didn't mean to stir up emotions, it was very touching. The reason for that was because it meant that he had never forgotten the care and nurturing that Qin Feiyang had given him. "You were originally a member of the Mu family." Mu Qing looked at Qin Chen with a complicated expression. "Yes. I used to be a member of the Mu family, but did the Mu family care about me? No. If it weren't for Qin Feiyang giving me a chance to be reborn, would I be where I am today?" Qin Chen sneered. In the past, Qin Chen was called Mu Chen. She used to be a very insignificant person in the Mu family. Moreover, his experience was similar to Qin Feiyang's. He was forced by Mu Qing to take the spiritual disaster pill, which caused his cultivation to be completely destroyed. This was also the reason why Qin Feiyang kept Qin Chen by his side. Mu Qing sighed. Some things, once happened, could never be changed. It was all because of the young and frivolous. Qin Feiyang patted Qin Chen's shoulder and turned to look at Xia Yuan and the others. You all know the situation in the Divine Kingdom. If you go this time, it will not bode well for you, so I hope that you can stay in the Great Qin. These people had always followed their ancestor to war. First, they conquered the Heavenly Sun Empire and established the Great Qin. Then, they conquered the Forgotten Continent and pacified the war in the main tower. Then, they conquered the ancient world and fought a bloody battle with the dragons. Finally, they followed them to the Sky Cloud Realm and the Divine Kingdom. It could be said that every divine general had outstanding military exploits. Moreover, these 54 divine generals weren't the only ones who followed their ancestor to war. Many had died in battle. Not even their bones were left. It was an extravagant hope for fallen leaves to return to their roots. Therefore, he didn't want Xia Yuan and the others to die in battle in a foreign land. Hearing Qin Feiyang's words, Xia Yuan and the others fell silent. After a long time, one of the divine generals smiled and looked at Qin Feiyang. If we can't overthrow the central dynasty and get rid of the ruler of the Divine Kingdom, even if we stay in the Great Qin, will we be able to enjoy our old age? That's right. If you lose, the central dynasty will definitely descend on the Sky Cloud Realm. Our Great Qin will also face a calamity. At that time, we will still die. No one will be able to escape unscathed. Therefore, we might as well fight with you on the front lines. As long as we can exchange for the peace of the world. Even if we die in the Divine Kingdom, it will be worth it. The others also spoke. Looking at this group of stubborn seniors, Qin Feiyang felt both heartache and gratification. These people were indeed his seniors. According to seniority, he should address each of them as ancestor because they were all people of the same generation as his ancestor, Qin Batian. Even so, they didn't admit that they were old. They still wanted to fight. For the people, for the world, for the peace of the various continents. Whoosh. Qin Feiyang took a deep breath and nodded. All right, let's face this calamity together. If we succeed, we will die trying. Yes. If we succeed, we will die trying. Everyone nodded. Even if they died in the end, their names would go down in history and be respected by future generations. Then let's go. Qin Feiyang waved his hand, and the group flew towards the bottom of the sea. Just as the group entered the sea, a white-haired old man and a white-clothed woman descended on the island. The two of them were Qin Yuan, and Bai Long was the snow python of the past. Now that the curse had been broken, he had returned to his true form. Did Dong Jinyang say anything to you? Qin Yuan asked. No, but I can clearly feel that he is hiding something. Bai Long shook his head. Feiyang and the others are the same. Qin Yuan sighed. Even someone as shrewd as you didn't get anything out of them? Bai Long was surprised. This old man didn't get anything out of them. Even if there were many opportunities in the Black Tortoise world, this old man didn't say anything. They're definitely doing this because they don't want us to worry about them. Why should we expose them? Qin Yuan smiled slightly. Bai Long nodded and looked down at the sea, muttering, no matter how long it takes, I will wait for your return. A miracle. The second level. How have you been these 3 days? Fire Python looked at Qin Feiyang and the others and asked. Qin Feiyang sorted out his emotions and smiled. Although it's been a short time, I'm already very satisfied. Yes. Contentment is bliss. Fire Python nodded. Qin Feiyang asked, Brother Fire, where are Long Chun and the others? They are still on the 3rd level. Do you want me to bring you to them now? Fire Python asked. Do you want to? White-Eyed Wolf was stunned and asked suspiciously, What do you mean? Fire Python explained, They are now with Ice Dragon, and you are not on good terms with Ice Dragon. That's why I asked if you want to go. Let's go. Why don't we go? We didn't do anything wrong. Why should we be afraid of him? White-Eyed Wolf sneered. Fire Python laughed involuntarily, But he still looked at Qin Feiyang and asked Qin Feiyang for his opinion. Let's go and have a look. Qin Feiyang pondered for a while and said with a smile. After saying that, he turned to look at Dong Jingyang, Mermaid Princess, Lin Yi, Xia Yuan, and the others and said, White-Eyed Wolf, senior brother, and I will stay outside. You guys go to the Black Tortoise realm to cultivate in seclusion. Everyone nodded. Qin Feiyang waved his hand and sent the group to the Black Tortoise realm. This time, not only did no one stay in the Great Qin, but there was also one person who would follow them to the Divine Kingdom. This person was Ji Tianyue. Now that Qin Feiyang had formed an alliance with the Purple Gold Divine Dragon Clan, the Celestial race and the human race, there was no need to imprison her in the Great Qin. Of course, he couldn't let her return to the Divine Kingdom openly. After all, the three races were still enemies with Qin Feiyang on the surface. Moreover, Qin Feiyang also gave Ji Tianyue all the ultimate profound meaning inheritance. After all, she was the ancestor of the Qin clan. Moreover, if Ji Tianyue hadn't destroyed the Divine Kingdom's door back then, the Sky Cloud Realm and the Great Qin Empire would have long ceased to exist. In other words, it was all thanks to Ji Tianyue that these continents could exist today. So, whether it was for public or private reasons, he should take good care of this ancestor. Qin Feiyang looked at Fire Python and said with a smile, Before going to find the Longchen siblings, take us to the place where you cultivate in seclusion. Why are we going to the place where I cultivate in seclusion? Fire Python was suspicious. Can't we go? Don't tell me you are hiding some treasure behind our backs. White-Eyed Wolf bared his teeth. Brother Wolf, maybe you are hiding a mistress in a golden house. Madman followed suit. Hearing this, Fire Python's face was full of wry smiles. These two bastards' imagination was too rich. They could even think of hiding a mistress in a golden house. Okay, I'll take you there. The next moment, the four of them appeared in front of a large hall. This is? Qin Feiyang and the other two were stunned. Wasn't this the temple located in the Divine Demon Forest? Fire Python looked at the temple and said with a smile, I usually cultivate in seclusion here because there is a time array here. I know you said it before, but this time array doesn't seem to be much. Qin Feiyang scanned the surroundings and looked at the Fire Python. He smiled and said, Pick a place, and I will set up a time formation that lasts 5,000 years per day. 5,000 years a day. Fire Python was taken aback and immediately became excited. It turned out that he was going to help him set up a time array. Not only did he give him all the ultimate profound meaning inheritance a few days ago, but now he was going to help him set up a time array. This brother was indeed not in vain. Fire Python looked around and finally looked at a giant mountain opposite him. This giant mountain was about 1,000 feet tall, and just happened to be facing the temple. Fire Python smiled. Let's go on top of that mountain. Okay. Qin Feiyang nodded and landed on top of the mountain. With a wave of his hand, a time array appeared and quickly merged with the mountain. Little Python, you're now the guardian of the third floor of the miracle. Don't do everything by yourself. Go find a few followers. It'll be impressive if you bring them out, right? White-Eyed Wolf bared his teeth. Followers? Fire Python was slightly taken aback and shook his head. I don't have such thoughts. I am the guardian, and it is my duty to protect the living beings of the divine ruins. How can I let others help me? If you do everything yourself, then do you still have time to cultivate? White-Eyed Wolf asked. It's nothing, because I won't interfere with ordinary small matters. Fire Python smiled. Okay, pretend I didn't say anything. Anyway, don't wait until we have stepped onto the peak of cultivation, and you haven't reached the great perfection sovereign realm. White-Eyed Wolf waved his hand. How is that possible? With the ultimate profound meaning inheritance you gave me and this time array, isn't it easy to reach the great perfection sovereign realm? In the past few days, he had also studied the inheritance Qin Feiyang gave him. These inheritances contained all the ultimate profound meaning. If he still couldn't grasp the ultimate profound meaning with such an inheritance, then he would be hopelessly stupid. Chapter 4384. Don't talk to them. If you talk to them, you won't be able to finish it in half a month. Let's go. Let's find Long Chun and his sister. Qin Feiyang looked at Fire Python and smiled. Fire Python nodded. Indeed. Talking to these two bastards, wasn't it asking for trouble? Also in the Nether King's hell. In a canyon. A small, exquisite wooden building was located inside. There were many flowers and plants around. Outside the canyon there was a river. An old man and a young girl sat on the bank of the river, fishing quietly. It was Ice Dragon and Long Chen. Long Chen was at the side, barefoot, swimming in the river. She looked at her father and brother next to her, and her crystal cheeks were full of happiness. Yes. At this moment, she was very satisfied, because she had never gotten along with her father like this since she was a child. The only regret was that her mother was not here. If her mother was here, how happy would the family of four be? You little girl, can't you see that your brother and I are fishing? How can we fish if you keep moving around like this? Ice Dragon looked at her unhappily. I like it, I'm happy to. Long Chen stuck out her tongue and made a face, looking very playful. Ice Dragon shook his head helplessly and said with a smile, Your sister has changed a lot. Yes. Long Chen nodded, looked at the innocent Long Chen, and smiled secretly. This may be the charm of Qin Feiyang and the others. If you continue to get along with them, even the coldest heart will gradually melt. Ice Dragon was slightly stunned and shook his head. It seems that you have a high opinion of them. It's not that I have a high opinion of them, but that's how I should evaluate them. Father, I have a question. Why did you always target them in the past? And while targeting them, you also want to train the inner demons and Lu Jiajin. Long Chen was puzzled. Ice Dragon was silent for a while, and said with a smile, Have you heard of the saying, a jade without carving will not become a treasure? Long Chen was surprised. What did he mean by that? Could it be that everything his father did was to train Qin Feiyang and the others? But why did his father do this? Moreover, the price was too high. This was because all the dragons of the ancient realm had been sacrificed. You know your father's situation as well. I don't have any feelings for the dragons of the ancient realm. The only people I care about are you and Qin. Ice Dragon laughed. These words sounded cruel, but coming from the mouth of the Ice Dragon, it seemed to be a matter of course. This was because the dragons of the Ice Dragon world had nothing to do with the dragons of the ancient world. If Ice Dragon hadn't traveled to the ancient realm and met Long Zun, the dragons of the ancient realm would have been nothing more than a small race in his eyes. Therefore, although he was also a mystical dragon, he did not care about the annihilation of the ancient realm's dragons. You should also care about Mother. Mother is very lonely in the Sky Cloud realm. Long Chen sighed. As children, who wouldn't want their parents to love each other until they grew old? Looking at the relationship between his parents, he felt really bad. Care. I also want to care about her, but every time I think of what she has done, I really can't face her. Ice Dragon sighed. Are you still bothered by the fact that Mother used you? Long Chen frowned. Can I not be bothered? We are all men. If it were you, if you met someone who used you, would you still be able to face her calmly? Child, it's not that I'm petty. As for your mother, she can be arrogant and despotic. She can also use my name to do whatever she wants in the ancient realm. However, she can't deceive my feelings. More so, she can't use my feelings for her to help her fulfill her ambitions. Ice Dragon sighed. The reason why Long Zun liked Ice Dragon, and even took the initiative to offer himself, was actually because he saw Ice Dragon's powerful strength. It could help her fulfill her ambitions. In other words, Long Zun did not have any feelings for Ice Dragon. It was completely a form of use. However, Long Zun did not expect Ice Dragon to be so rational, and not give her a chance to use him at all. If she really had Ice Dragon's help, the dragons might have already ruled the ancient realm. What would the dragon-slaying palace do? In fact, in the end, Long Zun was being too smart for her own good. She thought that by relying on this marriage with Ice Dragon, she could tie Ice Dragon and the dragons together and become her backing. However, she did not know that a powerhouse at Ice Dragon's level would not be bound by a marriage. To put it bluntly, for someone like Ice Dragon, marriage was simply dispensable. So, Longchen sighed. As a man, he could indeed understand his father's feelings. However, as a son, he sincerely hoped that his parents could let go of the past and get back together. Whoosh! At this moment, 4 figures descended from the sky. It was Qin Feiyang and the other 3. Looking at the canyon and river below, White-Eyed Wolf pursed his lips and said, "The scenery is beautiful. You really know how to pick a place." Moreover, within a radius of hundreds of miles in the canyon, they also sensed the aura of the time array. Obviously, there was also a time array here. "He's here." Longchen raised his head and looked at Qin Feiyang and the other 2 and laughed. Qin Feiyang nodded and led the madman, White-Eyed Wolf, and Fire Python to the riverside. Ice Dragon glanced at Fire Python and said indifferently, "You have quite a deep friendship with them." "Please forgive me, Lord Dragon God." Fire Python's gaze trembled as he hurriedly bowed. Qin Feiyang glanced at Ice Dragon, then looked at Fire Python and comforted him. "Brother Fire, don't be nervous. If Lord Dragon God really wants to care, you would have died countless times already. You're a sensible person." Ice Dragon glanced at Qin Feiyang again, the corner of his mouth revealing a trace of a sneer. To this, Qin Feiyang pretended not to see it, and laughed. "Lord Dragon God, we agreed on 3 days. We did not stay for 1 more day. Are you satisfied?" 3 days. Ice Dragon was startled and asked suspiciously, "What do you mean by that?" Qin Feiyang was stunned. The dignified dragon god actually pretended to be stupid? Ice Dragon said indifferently, "Don't talk nonsense. Did this sovereign say anything about 3 days? You make it seem like this sovereign is very unreasonable." The corner of Qin Feiyang's mouth twitched. It turned out that this was also a shameless fellow. "If you guys haven't had enough fun, you can go back as long as you want." Ice Dragon spoke again. When Qin Feiyang and the other 2 heard this, their faces darkened, their veins popped out, and they had the urge to beat someone up. They had already left, so what was the point of letting them go back? To experience the pain of parting again? Taking a deep breath and suppressing the anger in his heart, Qin Feiyang turned to look at Long Chun with a questioning look in his eyes. Long Chun shook his head, his face full of helplessness. Qin Feiyang couldn't help but feel disappointed, but he still didn't want to give up. He looked at Ice Dragon and smiled. "Lord Dragon God, you are a senior, and we are all juniors. Shouldn't you give us some guidance?" "What guidance?" Ice Dragon looked at him in confusion. Qin Feiyang couldn't help but feel weak physically and mentally, and said unwillingly, "The realm above the sovereign realm." "There's a realm above the sovereign realm? Who did you guys hear this from? Why didn't this sovereign know? Is there someone stronger than this sovereign in this world?" Ice Dragon was surprised. "What's the point of acting like this? We have already humbled ourselves and asked you for guidance. What else do you want?" The White-Eyed Wolf couldn't hold back the anger in his heart and roared, "Wolf Cub, what are you doing? Be more polite to my father." Longqin's expression changed, and he hurriedly shouted, afraid that the White-Eyed Wolf would anger his father. The White-Eyed Wolf glanced at Longqin and snorted, "Aren't we polite enough to him? We are just short of kneeling in front of him and begging him. If you guys really kneel and beg this sovereign can consider telling you." Ice Dragon looked at the 3 of them mockingly. The White-Eyed Wolf clenched his fists and said angrily, "Let's go." "Kneel and beg you? You're thinking too much. No matter how weak I am, I will never kneel to an old thing like you." Qin Feiyang also sighed helplessly, looked at Long Chun and Long Qin, and asked, "Are you guys still going to the Divine Kingdom? We are already halfway through the battle. How can we retreat halfway?" Long Chun chuckled, put down the fishing rod in his hand and stood up. "That's right. If you want to fight, let's fight to the end." Long Qin also stood up, barefooted, revealing her perfect skin. The White-Eyed Wolf looked at the siblings, then glanced at Ice Dragon, who was sitting motionlessly, and sneered, "I really can't figure it out." "What can't you figure out?" Qin Feiyang and the others looked at him suspiciously. "Someone is so selfish, such a bastard. How did he give birth to such a pair of righteous children? Are they really his biological children? Could it be that someone's head is emitting green light?" After saying that, The white-eyed wolf immediately ran away. What a joke. If such a thing was said, would he be beaten up if he didn't run? Sure enough. Hearing this, Ice Dragon suddenly burst into a towering rage, stared at the fleeing white-eyed wolf, and roared. You little bastard, do you want to die? Boom. As he pointed his finger, an invisible force roared out like a torrent, instantly crossing the long river of time and space, and drowning the white-eyed wolf. Screams immediately resounded through the sky. The body of the white-eyed wolf was directly shattered in an instant, and blood stained the sky. Father, have mercy. Longqin's expression changed, and she hurriedly shouted anxiously. Ice Dragon looked at his daughter. Why was she so anxious? Could it be? After taking a closer look, he found that Longqin's face was full of concern for the white-eyed wolf. How could this be? Why would his precious daughter like this shameless wolf cub? What sin had she committed? Immediately, a murderous intent flashed in his eyes. Father, stop it. Longqin did not notice the feelings shown by the white-eyed wolf, and her face was full of anxiety, especially when she felt Ice Dragon's murderous intent. She was even more anxious. Qin Feiyang and the others also clenched their hands. If Ice Dragon did not stop, even if they were no match for him, they would have to fight to the death. Ice Dragon took a deep look at Longqin, and finally suppressed the murderous intent in his heart. With a wave of his hand, the force that enveloped the white-eyed wolf disappeared. However, in such a short time, the white-eyed wolf was left with the last wisp of his soul. Ice Dragon's means were really terrifying. Chapter 4385. Longqin heaved a sigh of relief. Qin Feiyang, Frenzy, and Fire Python also heaved a sigh of relief. Ice Dragon stared at the remnant soul of the white-eyed wolf, his eyes flickering, and suddenly transmitted his voice. Qin'er, I'll give you a mission. No matter what, you can't let your sister be harmed by this wolf cub. His tone was not to be disobeyed. Oh no. Longqin finally reacted. His sister's inadvertent feelings for the white-eyed wolf had been noticed by his father. This was not good news. Because from his father's current attitude, it was not difficult to see that he would absolutely not allow his sister and the white-eyed wolf to be together. Did you hear that? Ice Dragon stared at Longqin. I heard it. Longqin hurriedly responded secretly. You'd better do as you say, otherwise I'll hold you responsible. Ice Dragon secretly snorted and waved his hand. Just looking at it makes me annoyed. All of you get lost. Longqin smiled bitterly. The one who provoked you was not me. Why are you getting angry at me? Besides, Qin was not a child. How could he control her? Moreover, if he insisted on interfering, Qin would definitely blame him. Wouldn't he be caught in the middle and be in a dilemma? Sigh. Longqin sighed secretly, looked at Qin Feiyang and the others and said, let's go. Land of the Buried Gods. Core area. In the sky, a space-time passage appeared. Qin Feiyang and the others walked out one after another, as well as the remnant soul of the white-eyed wolf. Of course, Fire Python must have stayed in hell. Damn, this old thing is too ruthless. The white-eyed wolf cursed. You deserve it, do you understand? You know that Yizhong has always liked Long Zun, but you still said such words in front of Ice Dragon. Aren't you looking for trouble? There's even a green light above your head. You really dare to say that? Madman rolled his eyes. Let me tell you, if it weren't for the fact that you're in such a sorry state, I wouldn't have let you off, because you're ruining my mother's reputation. Longqin stared at the white-eyed wolf. Longqin was also dissatisfied. I won't do it again. The white-eyed wolf smiled sheepishly. There will be a next time? Longqin said furiously. No. White-eyed wolf quickly waved his hands. In fact, he felt very wronged in his heart, because what he said was the truth. Longqin's personality was not compatible with Ice Dragon and Long Zun. Anyone would think the same way. Hurry up and go to the Black Tortoise world to reconstruct your body. Qin Feiyang also glared at the white-eyed wolf. If he sent the white-eyed wolf to the Black Tortoise world and left him outside, he might really incur the wrath of the masses. Immediately, Qin Feiyang looked at Longqin and Longqin and asked, Your father really didn't tell you about the realm above the sovereign realm? No. Long Chen shook his head, pondered for a while and said, but at that time he said something about the path of cultivation being endless. The path of cultivation being endless. Qin Feiyang and Madman looked at each other. Wasn't these words equivalent to admitting that there was indeed a new realm above the sovereign realm? Actually, what father said is right. Our current task is to quickly integrate all the ultimate profound, and temporarily don't think about any new realm. Long Qin said. Some things understanding too early may not be a good thing. Long Chen smiled. All right. Qin Feiyang nodded. Although he was helpless, he could only accept it. Long Chen glanced at the door of the Divine Kingdom and asked, are we going to the Divine Kingdom now? Isn't this your father's rule? We have to go back in 3 days. Besides, I don't want to stay any longer. I really don't want to experience the pain of parting. Qin Feiyang shook his head and sighed. Parting is indeed a sad thing, especially when it's parting with the people you care about the most. Long Chen sighed and looked in the direction of the dragon's nest. His expression was very disappointed. Don't look anymore. If you look again, you will be even more reluctant. Qin Feiyang patted Long Chen's shoulder. Long Chen retracted his gaze and smiled bitterly. My disappointment now is not because I have to separate from mother, but because of the relationship between the two elders. I don't know when it will be resolved. Didn't you say that you were going to let your mother take the initiative to apologize to your father? What? You didn't take action? Qin Feiyang frowned. Yes. On the day we came back, before we went to the Nether King's Hell, we talked to mother. However, not only did she not listen, but she even scolded us. Long Qin's face was filled with helplessness. In that case, this method is counterproductive? Madman said. Father has always blamed mother for using him and deceiving her. Mother has also always blamed father for not taking care of her, protecting her, and protecting the dragons of the ancient world. Because if father was willing to take action back then, the dragons wouldn't have been destroyed. If one of them was willing to lower their heads, it would naturally be easy to resolve. However, the current situation is that they are unwilling to lower their heads. This is equivalent to becoming a dead knot that can't be untied. Long Chen shook his head. His face was filled with worry. Let's take it slow. Perhaps one day, they will suddenly think it through. Qin Feiyang consoled. Let's hope so. Long Chen sighed. Wait, didn't you think of a rotten idea last time? If it really doesn't work, persuade them to leave. Madman suddenly spoke. You really took it seriously? Long Chen and Long Qin looked at Madman speechlessly. How can a child persuade his parents to leave? Isn't this a joke? You don't understand this. In the face of this kind of dead knot that can't be untied, we have to give him a strong medicine. Madman bared his teeth. Long Chen and Long Qin looked at each other. Is this method really going to work? Why not give it a try? Ahem. Looking at the two who were a little tempted, Qin Feiyang coughed dryly and quickly said, this is a bad plan. It's best not to use this method until the very end. Let's not talk about Long Qin first. Long Chen, such a rational person, was actually tempted by Madman's words. He was really convinced. That's true. Let's wait and see. Long Chen nodded. If it really didn't work, they could only use this method. Qin Feiyang waved his hand, and Lin Yi appeared with a smile. You go back to Sky Cloud Island and protect yourself. No. I want to go to the Divine Kingdom with you guys. Lin Yi shook her head. What? You want to go to the Divine Kingdom with us? Qin Feiyang frowned. Yes. Didn't you say that my old enemy is in the Divine Kingdom? I want to go and see. Moreover, Dong Zhengyang also said that the 10 Great War Souls can't escape this catastrophe. So instead of hiding in the Sky Cloud realm, it's better to go to the Divine Kingdom as soon as possible. Lin Yi smiled. But Qin Feiyang frowned. He really didn't want this girl to take risks in the Divine Kingdom. You all have the 10 Great War Souls. You are all working hard. How can I hide behind and be lazy? If you don't let me go now, I will go quietly in the future, Lin Yi said. You. Qin Feiyang was about to speak, but the madman waved his hand and said, let her go together, lest she really sneaks to the Divine Kingdom alone. We have to look for her everywhere. Okay. Qin Feiyang was helpless. Lin Yi was overjoyed. Suddenly she seemed to think of something. She looked at Qin Feiyang and the madman and said, "There is one more thing. For this old enemy of the divine kingdom, I will deal with it myself. Don't interfere." "This is impossible." The madman shook his head. "Yes. We can do anything you want, but not this." Qin Feiyang nodded. "Why? You don't believe me?" Lin Yi frowned. "It's not that we don't believe you. Your old enemy is the human race's prodigy. He has mastered the ultimate meaning of the strongest law, and he may have mastered two of them. Are you his opponent? Moreover, we have a good relationship with the human race's sovereign. You don't need to do it yourself," Qin Feiyang said. "But I just want to rely on my own ability. I don't want everyone to think that I am a useless flower vase who only knows how to rely on you." Lin Yi shook her head. "I support you." Longqin walked to Lin Yi's side and said, "We women, how are we worse than these stinky men? If we are ruthless, these stinky men will have nothing to do with us." Qin Feiyang, the madman, and Longqin looked at each other. They couldn't help but shake their heads and smile bitterly. "It's almost time. Let's go." Qin Feiyang looked up at the door of the divine kingdom, and his eyes gradually became heavy. The same went for the madman, Longqin, and Longqin, because they all knew that returning to the divine kingdom this time would be a near-death situation. However, none of them flinched. For the sake of the world and each continent, they must take a step forward and face it bravely. "Let's go." Qin Feiyang waved his hand. The group of 5 stepped into the sky step by step, and disappeared into the door of the divine kingdom. After a while, the door of the divine kingdom closed. Just after the door of the divine kingdom closed, figures rushed out from the mountains and rivers below and gathered from all directions, looking at the door of the divine kingdom suspended in the sky. These people were the strongest of each race, led by Feather Emperor, Blood Ancestor, and the Little Rabbit. For example, Azure Dragon and White Tiger. There were also Yin Xiang, Masked Shura, Qi Xiaoyan, and so on. These young people were also there. There was also a woman. This person was Longzuan. It's really as we expected. After returning from the lower realm, they went to the divine kingdom without saying a word. Blood Ancestor shook his head and sighed. This is their character. They don't want us to worry. No matter what, they want to shoulder it by themselves. Feather Emperor whispered, "Come on. We will always be in the Sky Cloud realm, waiting for you to come back." The 4 guardian beasts murmured. They felt the most. In the past, they were the ones guarding the Sky Cloud realm. Later, Human Emperor, Feather Emperor, and Blood Ancestor rose, and it was Human Emperor's turn to guard. Now, Qin Feiyang, Frenzy, Golden Winged Wolf King, Longqin, and Longqin, this generation of young people rose, and it was their turn to guard the Sky Cloud realm. Generation after generation, it could be said that, although the strength and resources of the Sky Cloud realm were not comparable to the divine kingdom, the creatures of the Sky Cloud realm, whether it was courage or responsibility, were not inferior to the divine kingdom. In fact, they were even stronger. It was also because of Human Emperor, Feather Emperor, Blood Ancestor, Blood Demon King, Qin Feiyang, Golden Winged Wolf King, Longqin, and Longqin, these responsible people, that the Sky Cloud realm could exist until today. They were all the pride of the Sky Cloud realm. They were the goals that future generations should pursue. Chapter 4386. Land of Nothingness. This place was as desolate as ever. Just in case, the door to the divine kingdom had been sealed again, and sent to the land of origin for Little Brat to personally guard. Brother Long, how long will it take for you to grasp the will of the heavenly Tao? Qin Feiyang turned to look at Longqin and asked. Now that I have grasped the ultimate meaning of 4 supreme laws, I still lack the last 2. Moreover, I have already comprehended these 2 laws. I am just waiting to fuse the ultimate meaning of the inheritance. Longqin smiled faintly. If that's the case, it shouldn't be long before I can grasp the will of the heavenly Tao. Demon Ancestor, Mu Tianyang, Mu Qing Dongjingyang, and the others should be soon. However, I still have 1,000 inheritances left in my hands. Who will fuse these inheritances? Qin Feiyang frowned. If he went back like this, he would be a child of wealth. Sky Cloud Realm, 6,500 inheritances. Ancient Realm and Great Qin 1,000 each. Now he only had 1,000 inheritances left in his hands. There were still a lot of ultimate meaning of laws and ordinary laws left, but these things didn't have much meaning in this battle. Why don't we give them to the Yin family to fuse? Madman said. The Yin family had many sovereign realm powerhouses. They could solve the current urgent situation. I don't agree. This balance can't be broken. Moreover, the powerhouse of the will of the heavenly Tao must be in our hands. Long Chun made a rare objection. Madman looked at Long Chun in surprise. I'm not selfish. Because in this battle, the powerhouse of the will of the heavenly Tao is the key to determining the outcome. What if the people of the Yun family fuse with the inheritance and grasp the will of the heavenly Tao? They start to become arrogant and don't listen to our orders. Although we have the ability to suppress them, when we really face them, it will be a very troublesome matter. Long Chun voiced his concerns. I also agree with Big Brother. However, Yin Zhongtian and Yin Zhongyue can be nurtured. Long Qin also expressed his opinion. The Yin family was not a benevolent family to begin with. Back then in the Sky Cloud Realm, the Yin family and the He family were at loggerheads. It wasn't entirely the He family's fault. Qin Feiyang pondered for a while and said with a smile, how about this? Give the Yin family 100 inheritances. 100 is still too much. 10 portions. I think that's about it. That's right. 10 inheritances can create 10 experts with the will of the heavenly Tao. Such strength is almost on par with the current Protoss and Terrans. Longqin and Madman spoke one after another. Apart from the human supremacy and the divine king, only the supremacies of the deity race and the human race had mastered the will of the heavenly Tao. In other words, in the entire divine race, from top to bottom presently, there were merely over a dozen people who possessed the will of heavenly Tao. Since all of you say so, then fine. Let's go to the Black Tortoise world first. Qin Feiyang nodded. With a wave of his hand, a group of people appeared in the tea garden. They saw the white-eyed wolf sitting alone in the tea garden, drinking divine brew. His physical body had been reconstructed. To be able to reconstruct it so quickly, it was obvious that he went to find the mermaid princess. Seeing a group of people appear, he waved his hand and bared his teeth. Long Chen rolled his eyes, looked at Qin Feiyang and said, "You make your own arrangements. I'm going into seclusion." After saying that, he ignored the white-eyed wolf, turned around and strode away. Qin Feiyang also turned his head to look at Lin Yi and said with a smile, You should also go into seclusion. Integrate a few ultimate profundities of supreme laws first. It won't be too late to find your old enemy. I also plan to take a good stroll around the divine kingdom first." Lin Yi smiled playfully. "Don't worry. There will be plenty of time in the future." With Lin Yi's current strength, Qin Feiyang was really worried about letting her wander around the divine kingdom alone. Okay. Lin Yi nodded, glanced around, and swept toward the west of the medicine field. Soon, she disappeared without a trace. "Have you learned your lesson this time?" Madman sat opposite the white-eyed wolf, took out a jar of divine wine, and laughed gloatingly. The white-eyed wolf pursed his lips, looked up at Longqin and said, "Although I don't want to admit it, your father is really strong." "Aren't you talking nonsense?" Longqin rolled his eyes at him, turned around, and walked away quickly, leaving the white-eyed wolf with a proud back. "What's there to be proud of?" The white-eyed wolf snorted coldly. "Others have the right to be proud. Do you?" Qin Feiyang had a look of disdain on his face. With a thought, a flame lotus appeared. "What's wrong?" Fire Lotus looked at Qin Feiyang suspiciously. Qin Feiyang smiled and said, "Give me the remaining 1,000 inheritances." Fire Lotus took out a universe ring and handed it to Qin Feiyang. Without asking anything, she immediately went back into seclusion. Qin Feiyang took out 10 inheritances and hesitated. "What are you doing?" Madman looked at him, puzzled. Qin Feiyang frowned and said, "I'm thinking. Yin Zhongtian has been with us for so many years. Wouldn't it be a little stingy to give them 10 inheritances now? The one who accompanied us is Yin Zhongtian. What contribution did the rest of the Yin family make to us? Instead, they created a lot of trouble for us when we entered the Black Tortoise world. So now, to give them 10 inheritances is already considered kind. Madman sneered. Yes, the Yin family should be thanking us. If we hadn't been protecting them, would they have the life they have now? The white-eyed wolf also spoke. That makes sense. Qin Feiyang nodded. He closed his eyes. Soon he found Yin Zhongtian. Then, with a thought, Yin Zhongtian appeared in front of Qin Feiyang and the others from the middle state. Yin Zhongtian was stunned. When he found himself in the land of demons and saw Qin Feiyang and the others, a smile crept up his face. Old Yin, this is for you. Qin Feiyang waved his hand and 10 inheritances flew to Yin Zhongtian. This is? Yin Zhongtian was puzzled. 10 inheritances, I hope you don't mind. Qin Feiyang smiled. Inheritances. Yin Zhongtian shuddered and hurriedly opened the metal boxes. Seeing the inheritances inside with his own eyes, he became even more excited. 10 inheritances sounded very little, but one had to know that each inheritance contained 6 ultimate mysteries. 10 inheritances meant 60. 60 ultimate mysteries. Who would have dared to think of that in the past? Hence, Yin Zhongtian could not help but feel that it was too little, but his face was filled with gratitude. In the Black Tortoise world, he had learned many things, and one of them was contentment. One must know how to be contented, only then would others like it. If one was greedy, not only would it arouse disgust, it would also implicate the people around you. Qin Feiyang asked, how have your Yin family members been doing in the Middle State all these years? With me personally overseeing it, how would they dare to act recklessly? Yin Zhongtian smiled. That's good. As for your Yin family members, I don't hope that they can help me with anything, but please don't give me any trouble. Qin Feiyang said. Understood. Yin Zhongtian nodded. Then you can go back. Qin Feiyang waved his hand. Yin Zhongtian kept the inheritances, cupped his hands and thanked him, then turned around and flew away like lightning. This old man is quite tactful. White-eyed wolf bared his teeth. Yin Zhongtian, Yin Zhongyu, Yin Guanghui, Yin Zifeng, they have always been good, but that brother of Yin Guanghui is a little uncomfortable. Madman shook his head. After saying so much, aren't they just insensible? If they could be a little more sensible, we wouldn't have only given them 10 inheritances. This was the so-called, losing the big for the small. Let's not talk about this. Let's go to the sacred land to take a look. Qin Feiyang got up and smiled. Although it had only been a few days outside, the Black Tortoise world had been tens of thousands of years. Tens of thousands of years was just a blink of an eye for them, but for those below the sovereign realm, it was still a very long time. Perhaps many disciples had already stepped into the sovereign realm. After all, he had given the sacred land the best resources and cultivation environment. A simple and unadorned hall was located at the top of a giant mountain. In front of the hall, there was a stone tablet that was 100 feet tall. On the stone tablet, there were 2 big words engraved, Sacred Land. This place was located in the eastern region. It was adjacent to the Devil's Land, separated only by a river. But this river was like a natural moat that separated the Devil's Land from the eastern region. Even if the disciples of the Sacred Land could see the Devil's Land on the other side, they couldn't reach it. Because above this river, there was a rule power. And with this rule power blocking it, no one could cross it. Around the hall, there were endless mountains and rivers. Green mountains and clear waters. The scenery was pleasant. In the mountains, there were countless caves of various sizes, and one could feel a powerful aura from afar. Swish! 3 figures descended in the sky. It was Qin Feiyang and the other 2. Whoosh! Not long after Qin Feiyang and the other 2 arrived, 2 figures rushed out of the hall and quickly came to Qin Feiyang and bowed. These 2 were naturally Pai Lupi and Theta Wang. How is it? Qin Feiyang asked with a smile. Everything is going well. The 2 nodded. Creating this sacred land was one of the proudest things in their lives. Because here, all the geniuses of the Black Tortoise world were gathered. This place would also become the cradle for the birth of powerhouses in the future. Qin Feiyang glanced down. The energy of the crystal vein and soul vein here was not inferior to the Devil's Land. Moreover, precious treasures could be seen everywhere in the mountains. This place was originally a very ordinary mountain, but now it had been forcibly turned into a cultivation sacred land, a place that all the creatures of the Black Tortoise world wanted to come to. Why did you build the sacred land next to the Devil's Land? The white-eyed wolf was curious. This is a little trick of ours. Letting them see the Devil's Land at any time is more motivating. And we also told them that as long as they are outstanding and work hard enough, they will definitely have the opportunity to enter the Devil's Land in the future. Pai Lupi scratched his head and smiled. So that's how it is. Sure enough, it's a little trick. The white-eyed wolf shook his head and laughed. Qin Feiyang asked, then how has their strength improved over the years? It's definitely fast. With such good resources, if they are still as slow as a snail, then is there any value in cultivating them? Since the establishment of the sacred land, according to the time of the Black Tortoise world, it has been about 30,000 years. In these 30,000 years, many people of the perfect imperishable realm have successfully stepped into the half-step sovereign realm with the help of the law miniature. Pai Lupi said, without the law miniature, no matter how monstrous a person was, it was impossible to be so fast. In other words, the law miniature was equivalent to a shortcut. Chapter 4387. How many are there now? Qin Feiyang asked. There are more than 3,000 sovereigns now. 2/3 of them are humans and 1/3 are beasts. Pai Lupi said. So many? Qin Feiyang and the other two looked at each other. It was completely beyond their expectations. This is all thanks to the law miniatures. Although the law miniatures don't have much use for us now, it has great significance for these creatures who have yet to step into the sovereign realm. Theta Wang smiled. Aren't we being a bit impatient by doing this? Madman frowned. Instead, he was a little worried, because these people were growing too fast. For example, if a pauper suddenly became rich, this kind of earth-shattering change was likely to affect their mentality. We have already considered this point. So every once in a while, we will carry out a life and death experience in order to sharpen their state of mind and cultivate their combat awareness, experience, courage. Pai Lupi said. That's more like it. Madman nodded and smiled. You guys are quite thoughtful. With this kind of comprehensive training, when they master the will of heaven in the future, they can immediately join the battle against the central dynasty. When Pai Lupi and Theta Wang heard this, they scratched their heads and felt a little embarrassed. Look, it's the sovereign. The sovereign personally came to our sacred ground. At this moment, someone noticed Qin Feiyang and the others in the sky. At this moment, one figure after another rose into the sky and gathered in the sky. Looking at the void that had turned into a sea of people in an instant, Qin Feiyang and the other two were shocked. The number of disciples in the sacred ground was beyond imagination. It was estimated that there were at least 5 to 6 million. There were humans and beasts. And all the beasts had transformed into human form in order to get along better with the humans. 5 to 6 million. If all of them grew up, what kind of scene would it be? There are still many disciples training outside. The total number of disciples in the sacred ground is about 7 million. Pai Lupi smiled. 7 million. The corners of Qin Feiyang and the others' mouths twitched. Wasn't this development too fast? There's no other way. Who asked our Black Tortoise world to only have one holy land for cultivation? Everyone is fighting to come here. Theta Wang smiled bitterly. The madman rolled his eyes and looked at the two of them. If that's the case, are you considering setting up a branch? Branch? The two of them were taken aback. Yes. Not just the eastern domain, but also the western domain, northern domain, and southern domain. That way, we can manage them separately. You don't have to be so tired. Madman said. So that's what you mean. We've also thought about this problem. Pai Lupi and the other two smiled and said, but we also have our concerns. What concerns? Qin Feiyang and the other two were suspicious. Although each of the 4 great domains has a holy land, the disciples of the 4 great domains might compete with each other over time, resulting in conflicts. This might not be conducive to unity. On the contrary, if we put them all together under the same system and under our management, this kind of thing can be avoided. The 2 of them spoke of their concerns. This is indeed a problem. Qin Feiyang nodded. For example, the Dragon God Palace in the ancient domain. The southern, northern, western and eastern Dragon God Palaces were secretly competing with each other. Moreover, if we set up a branch, the resources can't be distributed uniformly. There might be more or less deviation, and at that time, it will also cause dissatisfaction. There's also one more point. If we manage them separately, we won't be able to run up and down. The 2 of them smiled. Indeed. We won't interfere in the matters of the Holy Land. You guys can do as you see fit. Qin Feiyang looked at the 2 of them and smiled. The 2 of them looked at each other. Seeing Qin Feiyang's trust in them, they were even more determined to build this Holy Land well, and not let Qin Feiyang worry at all. Qin Feiyang looked at the disciples around him. Among these people, there were teenagers, as well as white-haired old men. Although these old people were old, they were still disciples of the Holy Land. Perhaps some people would say that they were already so old, so why were they still competing with the young people for cultivation resources? In fact, this was the standard for the Holy Land to recruit disciples. No matter how old you are, as long as you have good talent and good character, you can become a member of the Holy Land and enjoy the same treatment. Are you satisfied with the resources and cultivation environment of the Holy Land? Qin Feiyang asked with a smile. Yes. Everyone roared. This was simply a paradise for cultivators. It's good that you are satisfied. My efforts were not in vain. But, Qin Feiyang suddenly changed the topic and said with a bit of fierceness, letting you enter the Holy Land is not for you to be greedy for pleasure, but to train you to become a force to fight against the Central Dynasty in the future. Lord Ruler, you don't have to specifically say this. Because when we were taking the test, Pai Lupi and Theta Wang already explained it to us. The Holy Land's existence is a sharp knife in Lord Ruler's hand. We can die in battle at any time. But we are not afraid. Yes. To be able to fight side by side with Lord Ruler and do our part to protect the Black Tortoise realm, we can die without regrets. Their voices were sonorous and forceful. Everyone's expression carried a will to face death with equanimity. This time, it was Qin Feiyang who was moved. Looking at these people in front of him, he felt that everything he did was worth it. He also firmly believed that his previous decision was the right one. Instead of spending so much effort to cultivate the uncertain elements of the Yun family, it was better to cultivate these beings of the Black Tortoise realm, because these beings were the ones who were truly worth his efforts. Thank you. Thank you all for supporting me as always. Although you all say that I am the ruler of the Black Tortoise realm, I have always believed that without all of you, I would be nothing. This is not my Black Tortoise realm. It is your Black Tortoise realm. This is our common home. From today onwards, let us use our lives to protect this home. Anyone who dares to invade my home will be killed, no matter how far away they are. Qin Feiyang bowed deeply to all the disciples of the Holy Land. No matter how far away they are, they will be killed. The disciples below also roared, their battle cries shaking the sky. Qin Feiyang took a deep breath and swept his gaze over everyone. He smiled and said, "Senior brother, White-Eyed Wolf, with these people here, why should we fear the Central Dynasty?" Yes. The mad scientist and White-Eyed Wolf looked at each other, a bright smile creeping onto their faces. Qin Feiyang waved his hand, and the yin and yang rings given to him by Fire Lotus appeared. He handed them to Pai Lupi and Theta Wang and said, "There are 990 ultimate intense inheritances here. You two can make the arrangements." Yes. The 2 of them took the interspatial rings with trembling hands. Even the inheritance of the ultimate Upanishads was given to them without worry. This was more than just trust in them. He simply treated them as his brothers. Good luck. Qin Feiyang smiled and led the White-Eyed Wolf and Madman away. Farewell, Lord Ruler. The disciples of the Holy Land bowed and sent him off. After Qin Feiyang and the other two left, everyone immediately looked at the interspatial ring in Pai Lupi's hand. Inheritance? What inheritance? Ooh. Pai Lupi took a deep breath and exchanged a glance. Then he turned to the Holy Land disciple and said, "The inheritances here are all ultimate profundities of the strongest laws. The Lord Sovereign prepared them for our Holy Land." What? The inheritance of the earliest laws and ultimate profundity? Oh my God! Is this true? I'm not dreaming, am I? Lord Ruler, not only did you give us the law miniatures and help us open the door to potential, you even gave us such a good cultivation environment. Now, you're even giving us the inheritance of an ultimate law? He gave us everything and created our lives. We definitely won't let him down. We pledge our lives to the Lord Sovereign. Many disciples couldn't help but shout excitedly. The door of potential was also arranged by Pai Lupi and Theta Wang. After all, they didn't have much time. They had to open the door of potential to improve everyone's comprehension. This way, they could quickly comprehend the various laws. As for the potential pill, they didn't look for Qin Feiyang but went directly to Dan Wangkai. Because Qin Feiyang had given them the power of the Holy Land, it meant that no matter what decision they made, Qin Feiyang would support them. Moreover, they were sincerely thinking for the Holy Land and didn't have any selfish motives. Of course, not all disciples had opened the door of potential. Opening the door of potential required some conditions and tests. Pai Lupi suppressed his excitement and secretly discussed with Theta Wang for a while. Looking at the disciples below, he said loudly, "From today onwards, our Holy Land will establish a higher-level mysterious organization." Mysterious organization? The disciples below stopped their clamor and looked at the two suspiciously. That's right. The name of this mysterious organization is the Holy Hall. But don't think that this is a good thing. The Templar Hall was established for the Lord Ruler. Every disciple of the Templar Hall can enjoy better treatment than now, but at the same time, they will face greater danger. Thus, before entering the Templar Hall, you must be prepared to die. If you're afraid of death, I advise you not to come to the Holy Hall, Theta Wang said solemnly. If we're afraid of death, we won't even come to the Holy Land. The two of you just tell us, how can we enter the Holy Hall? The disciples below roared. 3 conditions. First, step into the Lord Realm. Second, obtain the ultimate profundity of the strongest laws. Third, take the responsibility of protecting the Black Tortoise world. Pai Lupi said. We can fulfill the first and third conditions, but the second condition, obtaining the ultimate profundity of the strongest laws, shouldn't be easy, right? After all, there are only 990 of them now, someone said. Don't worry. As long as you're willing to work hard, our Lord Sovereign will send us even more inheritances. Now I will announce the first batch of people to enter the Holy Hall. Those whose names I call, come here and receive an inheritance. Furthermore, you must all swear a blood oath to forever be loyal to the Holy Hall, to the Lord Sovereign, and to protect the Black Tortoise world. Ma Qionghui Wu Xiaoxiao, Lai Xinjuan In Haimen Luan Jing, Sha Hongrong, Shui Hingqing, Wen Yi Sun Ru, Wei Neng Long Jingquan Gaoing Qiu. Pai Lupi handed the spatial ring to Theta Wang and read out the names one by one. Those whose names were called out excitedly ran to Theta Wang and received their inheritances one after another. After receiving their inheritances, they all swore a blood oath. There were even some who swore a blood oath before receiving their inheritances. Chapter 4388. In the distance, above a mountain peak, 3 figures stood side by side. It was Qin Feiyang and the other 2 who had already left. In fact, they didn't really leave before, but stood here to see how the disciples of the sacred land would react when they saw the inheritance. But they didn't expect to see this scene. Sacred Hall. What a majestic and domineering name. To be honest, sometimes one really had to admire the brains and abilities of Pai Lupi and Theta Wang. All the tasks given to them were done properly, and they didn't need to worry at all. The birth of the Sacred Hall undoubtedly gave the disciples of the Sacred Land a new goal. Because now, only those who entered the Sacred Hall were the true geniuses. Whether it was glory or status, it was not something other disciples could compare to. The most important thing was, those who entered the sacred hall had to first make a blood oath. In this way, there would never be any betrayal in the future. The sacred hall would also become the highest authority in the Black Tortoise world. Frenzy shook his head and smiled. The scale of the sacred land has been established. Now we have things to do again. What are you busy with? The white-eyed wolf was suspicious. Isn't that nonsense? Now that time is tight. How can we wait for them to comprehend their own laws? Therefore, we have to find even more ultimate profundities of ultimate laws. Frenzy said. That's true. To compete with the Death God army, we have to have at least 50 to 60,000 Will of Heaven powerhouses around us. Damn, 50 to 60,000? How many ultimate laws do we need to comprehend? The white-eyed wolf roughly calculated, and was dumbfounded on the spot. Even if the god race, the human race, and the purple gold divine dragon clan attacked, even if they wiped out the three races in one fell swoop, they probably wouldn't be able to gather so many. This is indeed a difficult problem. However, it's not impossible. Qin Feiyang's eyes flickered. What? You really plan to attack the god race, the human race, and the purple gold divine dragon clan? The white-eyed wolf was surprised. Attack the god race, the human race, and the purple gold divine dragon clan. What do you mean? Qin Feiyang and Madman looked at the white-eyed wolf in confusion. Nothing. The white-eyed wolf reacted and hurriedly waved his hand. He had accidentally exposed his inner thoughts. Fortunately, the king and heavenly Lord Ji weren't here. Otherwise, they would definitely fight him to the death. Qin Feiyang looked at each other and gave the white-eyed wolf a strange look. This guy was too sneaky. He even had designs on the god race, the human race, and the purple gold divine dragon race. I'm just thinking about it. White-eyed wolf laughed dryly. Madman smirked. Don't worry, just think about it. I'll tell the king and uncle later. Don't. Aren't you harming me? The white-eyed wolf quickly begged for mercy. You know fear too? Madman rolled his eyes. He couldn't even think about it. I have an idea. Let's go. Qin Feiyang waved his hand and swept the two of them away. The land of the devil. In a courtyard. The king, heavenly Lord Ji, and Ji Tianyue were sitting in the courtyard, drinking tea and chatting happily. Whoosh. Qin Feiyang and the other two landed outside the courtyard. Madman kicked the courtyard door open. It seemed like he used a lot of force, but it was actually very light. He looked at the king and chuckled. We've already returned to the Divine Kingdom, but you don't have any intention of leaving. Are you planning to stay in the Black Tortoise world for the rest of your life? I do have this idea. Anyway, Ji Yunhai is in charge of the Purple Gold Divine Dragon Race's affairs. The king nodded. He was very serious. Madman's mouth twitched. Qin Feiyang and the white-eyed wolf walked in one after another. Qin Feiyang said with a smile. You can stay as long as you want, but you have to think carefully. If they don't see you for too long, the Central Dynasty might become suspicious. The people sent by the Central Dynasty a few years ago either died or fled. They definitely won't come back in a short period of time. The king waved his hand indifferently. Not necessarily. Let's contact Ji Yunhai and the others first. Let them know that we're back so they can rest assured. Qin Feiyang said and took out the divine sound transmission stone. However, after a while Ji Yunhai didn't respond. What's going on? In an instant, the few people present became nervous. Don't panic. I'll send a message to the Divine King and Jizun. Qin Feiyang comforted them and activated the divine sound transmission stone again. However, the Divine King and Jizun also didn't respond for a long time. It can't be that they're all entangled with something. Could it be that something happened to them? Heavenly Lord Ji was surprised. Qin Feiyang's heart couldn't help but sink. Ji Tianyue pondered for a moment and looked at the king and said, How about we send a message to great-grandfather and the others? Okay. The king nodded, and also took out the divine sound transmission stone. Buzz. Finally, a shadow appeared. It was Jijio. Jio. Everyone got up and bowed to Jijio. Ji Jiu looked at Ji Tianyue, Qin Feiyang, the madman, the white-eyed wolf, and even the king and heavenly Lord Ji were directly ignored by Ji Jiu. There was only Ji Tianyue in his eyes. His old eyes were full of joy. Ninth great-grandfather. Looking at the old man in front of her who had always loved her, Ji Tianyue's eyes couldn't help but turn red. How many years had it been? She thought that she would never see this old man again. Don't cry. It's good that you're back safely. Where are you now? Come to the village immediately. I'll inform Big Brother and the others. Without waiting for Qin Feiyang and the others to respond, Ji Jiu turned off the divine sound transmission stone. These old men really love my little sister the most, Heavenly Lord Ji said sourly. Of course. Ji Tianyue wiped away her tears and looked at Heavenly Lord Ji with dissatisfaction. Why didn't you visit them often in the past? You have to have a conscience. I used to be the patriarch of the Purple Gold Divine Dragon clan. How could I have the time to visit them every day? Heavenly Lord Ji said angrily. Were you born to be the patriarch of the Purple Gold Divine Dragon clan? When I left the Divine Kingdom back then, you were just a kid. Ji Tianyue snorted coldly. How can you say that? When you left the Divine Kingdom back then, I had already grasped the ultimate meaning of 3 supreme laws. How could I still be called a kid? Don't talk nonsense in front of these juniors. Heavenly Lord Ji glared at him. The leaving of the Divine Kingdom here referred to the first time the Divine Kingdom invaded the Sky Cloud realm. Uncle, don't worry. We will never laugh at you. The white-eyed wolf bared his teeth. Get lost. Heavenly Lord Ji's face darkened. Okay. Let's go to the village and see what's going on. The Divine King, Ji Zun, and second brother didn't respond to our messages. There must be something wrong, the king said in a deep voice. He was very worried now. But thinking about it, it didn't make sense. It had only been a few days since they left the Divine Kingdom. How could something unexpected happen? It's indeed a little strange. Qin Feiyang nodded and looked at the king and the other two. Just in case, senior brother, the white-eyed wolf, and I will go out first. When we reach the village, we will call you out. Okay. The king nodded. In the village. At this moment, at the entrance of the village, the 15 old men stood together, looking into the distant void with expectant gazes. After waiting for so many years, the little girl finally came back. How could they not be excited? Buzz. While waiting anxiously, a space-time passage suddenly appeared in the sky. The group of old men quickly looked up. 3 figures came out of the space-time passage. However, seeing the 3 of them, the group of old men didn't feel happy at all. Their eyes darkened and there was a trace of worry, but they quickly concealed it. Because the 3 of them weren't Qin Feiyang, the white-eyed wolf, or the lunatic. What are you doing here again? Looking at the 3 of them, Boss Ji frowned. The 3 of them were middle-aged. The person in the lead was about 7 feet tall. He was rather thin, and his chiseled face seemed somewhat cold. The other 2 men stood behind him. Their figures were extremely tall and sturdy, and they exuded a valiant aura from head to toe. It seems that you don't want to see us. The thin middle-aged man chuckled. Isn't it obvious? Boss Ji muttered. He was also very anxious. Qin Feiyang and the others were about to reach the village, but the 3 of them came halfway. Wouldn't they bump into them later? What's the matter? Boss Ji asked impatiently. Can't we come here if there's nothing? But why are you all gathered at the village entrance? Are you waiting for someone? Could it be that you know we're coming in advance, so you're waiting for us here? The thin middle-aged man laughed. Waiting for you? You really think you're a big shot? We're just going to have tea and discuss some family matters. If you don't have anything else, get out of here. Don't disturb us. Boss Ji waved his hand impatiently. He didn't look good at all. Looking at the attitude of the group of old men, the 2 burly men obviously showed a trace of anger on their faces. But the thin middle-aged man didn't seem to be affected at all. He landed at the village entrance and smiled. Actually, I'm here to ask about the whereabouts of the monarch. The whereabouts of the monarch? Didn't we ask you to find Ji Yunhai last time? Boss Ji frowned. I've looked for him. But Ji Yunhai doesn't know where the monarch is? And I can't get in touch with the voice transmission stone. You're all elders of the monarch, so I'm sure you know. Can you stop hiding it from me? I really have something to discuss with the monarch. The thin middle-aged man said helplessly. We really don't know. We only heard that he's in seclusion somewhere. Boss G shook his head. You old bastards, don't be so shameless. We're from the Central Dynasty. No matter what we do, you have to cooperate with us unconditionally. The two burly men couldn't hold back the anger in their hearts and shouted at Boss G and the others. What did you say? The group of old men's eyes turned cold. Especially Boss G. He had a fiery personality. How could he hold back when he saw the arrogant attitude of the two men and their overbearing tone? His body immediately emitted a monstrous aura, and his eyes were filled with killing intent. He laughed sinisterly. Say it again if you dare. Chapter 4389. The two burly men looked at each other and took a step forward. A terrifying aura surged towards Ji Laosher. You really dare to attack? Ji Laosher laughed. I was worried that I wouldn't have a chance to let you go. But just as he was about to attack, the skinny middle-aged man suddenly raised his hands and stopped the two burly men. The two burly men looked at the skinny middle-aged man in confusion. Are you stupid? They all have 3,000 incarnations and will of the heavenly Tao. What good will it do us to have a falling out with them here? The skinny middle-aged man glared at the two and said, Others are unreasonable, but we can't be unreasonable. After all, we are from the Central Dynasty and represent the face of the Central Dynasty. Ji Laosher sneered and didn't say anything. Who was it that came here shamelessly to pester them? They even said that they were unreasonable. If it wasn't for Qin Feiyang and the others coming, the three of them wouldn't be able to leave so easily. Since you don't welcome us, then let's go. The skinny middle-aged man said and opened a space-time tunnel. But just as the three of them were about to enter the space-time tunnel, another space-time tunnel appeared in the sky. Shit. Boss G and the others knew that things weren't good. They really bumped into them. What should they do now? They were very anxious. But they didn't dare to reveal any flaws and looked at the space-time tunnel in the sky suspiciously. The skinny middle-aged man and the other two also stopped and looked up. A familiar aura surged out from the space-time tunnel. It's those three brats. The group of old men's palms were sweating. The skinny middle-aged man and the other two revealed a trace of suspicion. Because they hadn't seen Qin Feiyang and the others with their own eyes, they couldn't distinguish their aura. But they could tell that these three auras were very strong. Finally, Qin Feiyang, the madman, and the white-eyed wolf walked out from the space-time tunnel. The skinny middle-aged man and the others stared angrily. Wasn't that Qin Feiyang and the others? Although they hadn't seen Qin Feiyang and the others with their own eyes, they knew what they looked like. What was going on? Why did these three come to the village? At the same time, Qin Feiyang and the other two walked out of the space-time passageway and looked down at the village below. When they saw the three unfamiliar faces, they could not help but be stunned. Who were these three people? He had never seen it before. They are from the Central Dynasty. Suddenly, Boss G's voice rang in the minds of Qin Feiyang and the other two. Someone from the Central Dynasty. Qin Feiyang and the other two felt a chill in their hearts. In the blink of an eye, Qin Feiyang immediately came up with a solution. He looked at Boss G and the others and smiled. I didn't expect you to have guests today. The mad scientist and the white-eyed wolf came to their senses as well. They glanced at Boss G and the others with sneers in their eyes. What are you doing here? Boss G immediately understood what Qin Feiyang meant. He looked at Qin Feiyang and the other two and said in a deep voice. Haha. Qin Feiyang and the other two burst into laughter. What are you laughing at? Boss G's eyes darkened. I'm laughing at your stupidity. Everyone knows that we are irreconcilable with your purple gold divine dragon clan. What else can we do here other than to settle accounts with you? Are we here to give you our blessings? Qin Feiyang's face was full of ridicule. You're courting death. The group of old men emitted a shocking killing intent. Don't be in a hurry to make a move. Aren't you going to introduce these three? Who are they to your purple gold divine dragon clan? I don't think I've seen them before. Qin Feiyang looked at the skinny middle-aged man and the other two. The two burly men stared at Qin Feiyang and the other two and said to the skinny middle-aged man, "The courage of these three is indeed worthy of their reputation. They actually dared to come to this village so openly. Isn't this normal? Mount Supreme, God's Island, the Purple Gold Divine Dragon Clan's territory. They often visit those places." The skinny middle-aged man thought. His superb acting skills didn't make the three suspicious at all. They really thought that Qin Feiyang and the other two were here to cause trouble for the village. Boss Ji glanced at the skinny middle-aged man and the other two, then looked at Qin Feiyang and said calmly, "We don't know them." "You don't know them? If you don't know them, why would they be here as guests? Do you think I'm a 3-year-old kid?" Qin Feiyang sneered. The skinny middle-aged man chuckled and looked at Qin Feiyang. "Qin Feiyang, right?" "Yes." Qin Feiyang nodded. "You're really arrogant." The skinny middle-aged man smiled. "You flatter me." At this time, they really had to be arrogant. Otherwise, this show wouldn't be real. "You really aren't humble at all. But, do you know this village well? Coming here so confidently. Aren't you afraid of kicking an iron plate?" The skinny middle-aged man looked at Qin Feiyang and the other two with a mocking expression. He had heard of the three's methods, and they were indeed ridiculously strong. However, every old man here had 3,000 incarnations. It could be said that this seemingly simple village was actually a tiger's den. Qin Feiyang had 3,000 incarnations, but how could he compare with these 15 old men? Iron plate? Qin Feiyang and the other two looked at each other and couldn't help but laugh. The skinny middle-aged man raised an eyebrow. Crazy man laughed. "Looks like you're not from the 4 continents, because you don't know us at all. The last thing we're afraid of is kicking an iron plate. Is that so?" Hearing this, the skinny middle-aged man's eyebrows relaxed. He turned to the group of old men and smiled. "Everyone, they're already openly provoking you. Are you still going to hold back?" It was as if they were watching a show. "Shut up." Ji Laosher glared at the skinny middle-aged man, then looked up at Qin Feiyang and the other two with a gloomy expression. However, he secretly said, "We can't kill these three, at least we can't. Because their souls are in the Central Dynasty." "Their souls are in the Central Dynasty?" Qin Feiyang and the other two frowned. This was really a little troublesome. Ji Laosher said again. "And at this time, if you kill them, we can't just sit by and watch. So quickly think of a good reason to leave." Now they really needed a good reason. Because Qin Feiyang and the other two had already stated that they came to the village to cause trouble. It would be abnormal if they didn't find a good reason to leave now. "Then let's fight first. We'll escape later if we can't win." Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed and he transmitted his voice to the group of old men. "Okay. Then don't blame us for being heavy-handed later." Jijiu secretly said with a hint of mockery in his eyes. "These 3 brats, I've long wanted to beat you up. How dare you have any ideas about this old man's tea garden in the future?" Looking at Jijiu's eyes, Qin Feiyang and the other two couldn't help but feel guilty. This old man, is he going to avenge private grudges? "Old bastard, take this." Madmen roared. 6 ultimate laws were activated, and with the power to destroy heaven and earth, they blasted towards the village below. "How dare you!" Ji Laosher took 11 steps forward, and also attacked with all his strength. 8 ultimate laws roared in all directions and collided with Madman's 6 ultimate laws. Terrifying battle fluctuations suddenly erupted and rolled out in all directions. "Not good, quickly stop the battle fluctuations." Ji Laosher roared. A group of old men soared into the sky and the power of law surged out, sealing off all directions. A battle of this level was indeed enough to destroy everything. Puff. At the same time, Madman spat out a mouthful of blood and retreated. A 6 paths ultimate intent against an 8 paths ultimate intent would naturally be crushed. Just this? The thin middle-aged man and the other two were stunned. The infamous Madman Emo only had this much strength? Kiki. Madman stabilized his footsteps and wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth while staring at Ji Laosher. A wave of evil force spread out. Immediately, streaks of terrifying sword chi surged out in all directions with Madman as the center. "You can't continue to fight here, or else everyone within a radius of 10 billion miles will be destroyed. Ji Laoshi roared. What does the destruction of your divine kingdom have to do with me? Madman laughed wildly. Accompanied by a loud clang, the all-evil sword appeared and the terrifying sword energy roared as it tore through the sky. What is this? The thin middle-aged man and the other two were shocked. This power had already far surpassed the ultimate laws. All-evil sword. An existence comparable to the sword of faith. I finally have the chance to personally experience this super-killing technique. Ji Laoshi sneered. All-evil sword? An existence comparable to the sword of faith. The thin middle-aged man and the other two were frightened when they heard this. They all knew about the sword of faith of the human sovereign, and its terrifying destructive power, but they didn't expect Madman Mo to have a killing technique of the same level. As expected, these people couldn't be underestimated. Boom. The all-evil sword was invincible, and Ji Laoshi's 8 ultimate laws were shattered on the spot. Immediately after, the all-evil sword crazily charged towards Ji Laoshi. Ji Laoshi also spurted out a mouthful of old blood. Looking at the all-evil sword, his eyes were filled with fear. This super-killing technique, if one didn't have the means of 3,000 incarnations, it would be impossible to block it. In other words, the all-evil sword could already be called an invincible existence. After all, there weren't many people in the world who had 3,000 incarnations. Even in their purple-gold divine dragon clan, there were only a dozen people who had 3,000 incarnations. Moreover, he could clearly feel that Madman's all-evil sword seemed to be stronger than before. Could it be that the all-evil sword was the same as the sword of faith? As Madman absorbed more and more evil force, its destructive power would also become stronger? This was because the sword of faith would become more powerful as it absorbed more faith. If that was the case, then in the end, to what extent would the all-evil sword grow? Against the world's sovereign? In fact, it could even compete with the origin energy? It was hard to imagine. Swish. In the nick of time, Ji Laoshi activated his 3,000 incarnations, and tens of thousands of ultimate laws appeared. The terrifying aura shook the world, and even Boss Ji and the others couldn't block it. Laoshi, go to the Star River. Ji Laoji roared. Chapter 4390. Let's fight in the galaxy. Ji Laoshi stared at the lunatic and roared. He then led his 3,000 clones and charged into the galaxy without looking back. Afraid of you? The lunatic grinned. He grabbed the all-evil sword and charged forward. Why does it look like they're really going all out? Are they going to turn the show into a real one? The white-eyed wolf said telepathically. Qin Feiyang looked at Ji Laoshi, and then at Boss Ji and the others. Maybe these old men have long wanted to fight us head-on. In the previous battle, Boss Ji and the others were no match for Qin Feiyang. In the end, the group of old men had to join forces to suppress Qin Feiyang. They probably weren't convinced. After all, they were the strongest in the divine nation, and they had to join forces to suppress a junior. This was more or less a loss of face. Whoosh! Qin Feiyang and the lunatic also charged into the galaxy. Boss Ji and the others followed closely behind. What should we do? The two burly men looked at the skinny middle-aged man. Nonsense. This is such a rare opportunity. We have to follow. The skinny middle-aged man glared at the two. As long as these 15 old men were completely enraged, Qin Feiyang and the other two would definitely die. The galaxy. The lunatic and Ji Laoshi had already clashed. 24,000 esoteric meanings destroyed the galaxy. It was unstoppable. The lunatic waved his hand, and the all-evil sword flew out of his hand. Endless power of all evil roared out from his body, and poured into the all-evil sword. Clang! The 10,000 evil sword, which was originally 3 feet long, immediately began to expand. Moreover, the power and sharpness it emitted became more and more terrifying. As expected, his all-evil sword is becoming stronger as the power of all evil increases. Everyone's heart trembled when they saw this scene. The little lunatic is also going all out. The white-eyed wolf murmured. Qin Feiyang nodded. Clang! In just a few breaths, the all-evil sword became a huge sword, and its terrifying sharpness destroyed the galaxy. I'd like to see how strong the 3,000 clones are. Madman roared. The giant sword that was 10,000 feet long moved with a loud rumble. It was as if it was formed from blood, and a murderous aura filled the sky. Rumble. In an instant, the sword of all evil collided with the 24,000 ultimate intents, resulting in a destructive ripple that swept across the place like a surging tide. A shocking scene followed. The all-evil sword seemed to be able to split the heavens and earth apart as it continued to shatter the ultimate intents. In just the blink of an eye, thousands of ultimate mysteries were annihilated. How is this possible? Why do I feel that it's even more terrifying than the sword of faith of the human sovereign? Ji Laoshi was shocked, because he understood the sword of faith very well. It was impossible for the sword of faith of the current human sovereign to achieve such a feat. In other words, Madman's speed of growth was even faster than the human race's supremes. Faith needs to be born slowly. And there are restrictions, because the number of humans in the West continent has always been limited. If the power of faith of the human sovereign wants to grow, it must obtain the faith of other races. But the power of all evil is different. The power of all evil is everywhere. Moreover, it has no restrictions. All living beings in the world, and no matter how kind they are, they will more or less produce killing intent, evil intent, resentment, and evil intent. As long as there are killing intent, evil intent, and resentment, the power of all evil in the world will not disappear. And Madman controls the source of all evil, so he is the master of all evil. Although he doesn't deliberately absorb the power of all evil, because of the source of all the power of all evil in the world has been gathering toward him. In short, although he doesn't deliberately absorb it, he is absorbing the power of all evil in the world at any time and place. Therefore, his growth is incomparable to that of the human sovereign. Boss Ji whispered. Yes. After fusing with the source of all evil, he is now the source of all evil himself. Jiju nodded. All along, Madman had not deliberately absorbed the power of all evil in the world, which led many people to think that his power of all evil had not increased. They thought that the sword of all evil was still the same as before, but little did they know, Madman was now the source of all evil. The power of all evil in the world was constantly pouring into his body, but all of this was invisible and no one could see it. It meant that his power of all evil did not need him to cultivate, nor did he need to actively absorb it. It was growing stronger every moment. This was the most terrifying part of Madman now. It was also his previous life that created him. The Blood Demon King in his previous life did not succeed in fusing with the source of all evil, so he stayed in hell. In the end, the madman of this life succeeded in fusing with it, and turned into the god of all evil. Rumble. The 24,000 ultimate meaning were still shattering. This sword of all evil seemed to be so powerful, that it could defy the heavens. This scene not only shocked Boss Ji and the others, even Qin Feiyang and the white-eyed wolf were dumbfounded. They never expected, in these short years, Madman's power of all evil had unknowingly grown to such a level. Even Madman's brothers, Qin Feiyang and the white-eyed wolf, were like this, not to mention the three thin middle-aged men who were seeing Madman for the first time. Their faces were filled with disbelief. If it were them, they would have been dead by the sword of all evil long ago. Crack! Just as the sword of all evil was shattering the 10,000 ultimate meaning, suddenly accompanied by a loud noise, the sword of all evil finally cracked and then quickly collapsed. Obviously, this was the limit of the sword of all evil. But even if the sword of all evil was shattered, the shock in everyone's heart could not be calmed down for a long time. With just the power of one sword, he shattered 10,000 ultimate meaning. And they were all the strongest law ultimate meaning. And they all carried the will of the heavenly Tao. This level of divine might was something that even those high-level sovereign divine weapons couldn't compare to. The thin middle-aged man roared. This child must not be left alive, otherwise, who knows how far he will grow in the future. Ji Laoshi, quickly get rid of him. His eyes were filled with killing intent. If this madman Mo was allowed to continue growing, he would definitely become the #1 enemy of the Central Dynasty in the future. Ji Laoshi looked at the thin middle-aged man, and a trace of killing intent flashed in his eyes. He actually wanted him to kill this little madman? What a joke. If not for the fact that you left your divine soul in the Central Dynasty, this old man would have killed you first. The stronger madman was, the happier Ji Laoshi was. Not to mention the future, just madman's current strength was enough to destroy 1,000 death god army. However, the show still had to continue. The remaining 14,000 ultimates attacked Madman in a frenzy. At this moment, Madman's face was pale, and his body was weak, as if he himself had reached his limit. After all, with the power of this sword, he had shattered 10,000 ultimate meaning that contained the will of the heavenly Tao, and the power of all evil was almost exhausted. It's your turn. Let me see. Where is the limit of your heaven-devouring beast battle soul? Qin Feiyang laughed inwardly. The limit of this brother's battle soul? If I say it, I'm afraid it will scare you. The white-eyed wolf bared his teeth. Then why don't you tell me? Qin Feiyang secretly said. Not telling you. The white-eyed wolf smiled proudly. The corner of Qin Feiyang's mouth twitched. This bastard is always so mysterious. Even the domain of Dong Hanzong and the others could be swallowed effortlessly. The limit of this white-eyed wolf's battle soul must be very high. If you don't make a move, this little madman will really be gone. The white-eyed wolf secretly said. Qin Feiyang helplessly stared at him, activated instant time, and took a step forward, instantly appearing in front of Madman. This daddy is about to catch up with you. Madman bared his teeth. You think you can catch up with me just because you can shatter 10,000 ultimate meaning? Senior brother, it's still early. Don't forget, I have mastered the law of life and death. And I also have dual will of heavenly Tao. Qin Feiyang laughed. Boom. 3,000 clones were activated. 3,000 ultimate meaning of the law of life and death instantly appeared in the sky, and the dual will of heavenly Tao erupted. In a one-on-one fight, let me ask you, which one of you is my opponent? Qin Feiyang looked at Boss Ji and the others with a domineering smile. He then waved his hand, and the 3,000 ultimate meaning of the law of life and death were like a torrent of beasts, crushing the 14,000 ultimate meaning. This is the lethality of the law of life and death and the dual will of heavenly Tao. The skinny middle-aged man and the others looked at this scene, and their scalps went numb. Too strong. This is the true invincible realm. Destroy. Qin Feiyang said faintly, and the ultimate meaning of the law of life and death fell. Ji Laoshi's face changed drastically, and he quickly retreated. Even so, his physical body, including the 3,000 clones behind him, were shattered on the spot. His divine soul rushed to the side of Boss Ji and the others, and his eyes were filled with fear. This brat's current strength was too terrifying. Even he could only be killed in seconds. In the entire Divine Kingdom, apart from the ruler of the Divine Kingdom, who else had the ability to fight this brat one-on-one? Chapter 3, release at 9:30. Chapter 4391. Is he still a human? The skinny middle-aged man and the other two looked at Qin Feiyang. Their faces were deathly pale, and their bodies were trembling non-stop. He was ridiculously strong. He could even suppress someone like Ji Laoshi with a wave of his hand. It was no wonder that the Central Dynasty had sent so many experts, and even Dong Qingyuan had failed miserably all these years. If they didn't send out the entire Death God army, they wouldn't be able to fight against such strength. Madman, who was standing behind Qin Feiyang, looked at Qin Feiyang's back, and suddenly felt like he was looking up at someone. It was as if he was standing in front of a god. No. I'm the god of all evil now. I can't lose to this bastard. Die, they must die. The middle-aged man shuddered and turned to Boss Ji and the others. He shouted. They're like caged birds now. They can't escape even if they have wings. All of you kill them. Qin Feiyang and Madman were indeed strong. But now, Madman had lost his ability to fight. Although Ji Laoshi had also lost his ability to fight, there were still 14 elders. As long as Boss Ji and the others attacked, they could definitely kill Qin Feiyang and the others. Boss Ji and the others heard this, and a murderous intent flashed in their eyes. But this murderous intent wasn't directed at Qin Feiyang, but at the three elders. Master Ji rolled his eyes and looked at Qin Feiyang. He asked, "Kid, haven't you thought of a way to escape? If this continues, we'll have to work together to beat you up." Qin Feiyang looked at Master Ji helplessly. "You've been wanting to beat me up for a long time, right? You just couldn't find the chance. How can that be? You're so outstanding. I can't wait to feel sorry for you," Master Ji thought. Qin Feiyang smiled bitterly. It seemed that this old man had been holding a grudge about the tea trees. Let's take this opportunity to teach him a lesson. Master Ji sent a message to Boss Ji and the others. Then he activated his 3,000 incarnations. Boss Ji and the others looked at each other and smiled bitterly in their hearts. They also activated their 3,000 incarnations. Wasn't it just a few dozen tea trees? Was it necessary to keep worrying about it? I'll go. Master Jiao is really abusing his position to avenge a private grudge. Madman's pupils shrank when he saw this. He hurriedly retreated to the side of the white-eyed wolf, as if this matter had nothing to do with him. He didn't drink tea anyway. This matter had nothing to do with him. You guys are too stupid. You actually overestimated yourself and came to this village. Now pay the price for your stupidity. The thin middle-aged man laughed wildly. The two burly men also sneered. In their opinion, Qin Feiyang and the other two were dead for sure. Can you shut the fuck up? The white-eyed wolf turned to glare at the thin middle-aged man. Haha. Go ahead and curse. Curse all you want. What I love the most is seeing you in such a desperate state. The middle-aged man laughed heartily. You're courting death. The white-eyed wolf's eyes flashed with killing intent as he activated his 6 ultimate mysteries. You still want to kill us? Are you dreaming? The three of them sneered. Boom. Rays of ultimate mysteries were activated. The will of heavenly path was like a volcanic eruption, enveloping all directions. They actually mastered the will of heavenly path. The white-eyed wolf was astonished. Wasn't this prey delivered to his doorstep? He was still worried about where to find the ultimate mysteries of the ultimate law. Are you afraid? Unfortunately, it's too late. We'll send you to hell first. The thin middle-aged man sneered. Immediately, more than a dozen ultimate mysteries were directed at the white-eyed wolf. 3 good-for-nothings who boast shamelessly. The white-eyed wolf's eyes were surging with killing intent. The heaven-swallowing battle soul was born. The galaxy began to collapse at once, as though it was the end of the world. What is this? The thin middle-aged man and the other two were bewildered. Swallow. The white-eyed wolf roared as the battle soul opened its mouth wide. More than a dozen ultimate mysteries of the trio were swallowed by the battle soul in one gulp. There was no wind at all. The trio was instantly dumbfounded. There was actually such a thing? Forcefully swallowing their ultimate mysteries? What was this? It was so terrifying. The white-eyed wolf said with contempt. Trash like you dare to be arrogant in front of me? Who gave you the guts? The trio trembled in fear. They did not expect the golden-winged wolf king's means to be so shocking. Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed as he landed beside the white-eyed wolf in frenzy. He laughed. You still treat us as fools. If we didn't have full confidence, would we dare to kill our way into this village? What do you mean? The thin middle-aged man and the other two were bewildered. It seems that you really don't know much about us. We never do things that we are not confident in. Qin Feiyang shook his head and sneered. He looked at the entrance of the galaxy and bowed. Welcome, heaven-swallowing beast and ice dragon. Heaven-swallowing beast. Ice dragon. Boss Ji and the others were shocked and quickly turned to look at the entrance of the galaxy. Seeing this, the thin middle-aged man and the other two also turned to look at the entrance of the galaxy. However, there was no one outside the entrance of the galaxy. What's going on? Wait. We've been fooled. The group of people reacted and immediately turned to look at Qin Feiyang and the other two, only to see that the three of them had already opened a space-time tunnel and walked in without looking back. Who is the stupid one to be fooled by such a small trick? Frenzy's mocking laughter came from the space-time tunnel. Damn it. Bastard. The thin middle-aged man and the other two were furious and crazily attacked the space-time tunnel. But when they went to destroy the space-time tunnel, Qin Feiyang and the other two had already left. These three little bastards, they said it as if it was true. Even I was shocked by them. Boss G's mouth twitched. The others also had a bitter smile. They really thought that the heaven-swallowing beast and ice dragon were here. At least they ran away quickly, otherwise this old man would really teach them a lesson today. Jijio secretly snorted. Hearing this, Boss G and the others looked at each other. They were really impressed by this old man. It had been so long and he was still holding a grudge. Immediately, the group of old men looked at the thin middle-aged man, and the other two. Did you see that? Not only are the three of them powerful, but they are also very cunning. If you are not careful, you will fall into their trap. So, if you want to get rid of them, you should hurry back and ask the emperor to send more people over. Boss G said. The three of them looked at the group of old men, turned around with a sullen face, and left without saying a word. Thousand Phoenix Mountain. Qin Feiyang and the other two stood in the air above the mountain. The Frenzy and the White-Eyed Wolf looked at Qin Feiyang with a mocking expression, because Qin Feiyang had a face full of fear at this moment. Fortunately, he ran away quickly, otherwise he would definitely be beaten up by Jijio. How is it? Do you still dare to have any ideas about his tea trees next time? The White-Eyed Wolf bared his teeth. Don't gloat, you have a share too. Qin Feiyang snorted coldly. But I don't drink tea. The one who drinks tea is you. I am at most an accomplice. The White-Eyed Wolf chuckled. Qin Feiyang rolled his eyes and frowned. Why are there people from the Central Dynasty again? These three people definitely didn't come from the Central Dynasty recently. Because if they came recently, it must be the Central Dynasty's main force that came to the four great continents. Moreover, it takes about 3 months to come from the Central Dynasty to the four great continents. The Frenzy said. I think so too. The last time the Death God army came to the four great continents, they were persuaded to retreat by the inner demons and Big Cousin, let alone these three small fries. I think they came at about the same time as the Death God army last time, and when I observed them before, I found that they don't seem to know much about our situation. So I think they are not members of the Death God army, and should be from a family of the Central Dynasty. The White-Eyed Wolf guessed. Qin Feiyang nodded, a cold light flashing in his eyes. He smiled and said, no matter who they are, as long as they come to our door, we don't need to be polite and we'll take them all. That's what I think too. The White-Eyed Wolf smiled. As long as they could get the ultimate profound of these three people, they could cultivate 3 more powerhouses with the will of heaven. Buzz. At this time, Qin Feiyang's divine sound transmission stone rang. Qin Feiyang was taken aback. He quickly took out the divine sound transmission stone and checked it. He looked at the Frenzy and the White-Eyed Wolf and said with a smile, It's Boss G. You sent us a message so quickly? It seems that the 3 of them are quite sensible. They didn't stay in the village. The Frenzy said. Qin Feiyang activated the divine sound transmission stone, and a group of old men appeared. With the previous lesson, they were not at the entrance of the village, but in the secret room under the village. Jijio looked at Qin Feiyang and said with a smile, Why are you running so fast? We won't really beat you up, we're just pretending. Qin Feiyang heard this and turned to the Frenzy and asked, Senior brother, do you believe it? I don't believe it. The Frenzy pouted. Qin Feiyang looked up at Jijio and said with a smile, See, even senior brother doesn't believe it. Do you think I will believe your nonsense? The corner of Jijio's mouth twitched slightly, and he said with a dark face, Don't talk nonsense, hurry up and come directly to the secret room, in case you run into someone else. Roger. Qin Feiyang turned off the divine sound transmission stone, and opened a space-time passage. He had been to the secret room under the village, so he knew the location and coordinates. Chapter 4392. Inside the secret chamber. Ji Laosher's divine soul stared at Qin Feiyang angrily and said, Brat, you're really ruthless. Luckily, I ran away quickly, otherwise I would have been killed by you. Ha! I had no choice but to put on an act. Besides, we know your strength. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that you are unparalleled. You definitely have a way to save your life. Qin Feiyang forced a smile. Don't flatter me. I don't buy it. Ji Laoshi glared at him. Don't be angry. I'll ask my wife to help you rebuild your body with the Eye of Life. Qin Feiyang comforted him. Ji Laoshi rolled his eyes and said helplessly, then forget it. If someone from the Central Dynasty comes again and sees that I reconstructed my body so quickly, they will definitely be suspicious. Qin Feiyang smiled. Sit down. Boss Ji waved his hand. A group of people sat around the table. I thought it would take a long time for you to come back, but I didn't expect you to come back so soon. What's wrong? Did something happen? Boss Ji looked at Qin Feiyang and the other two suspiciously. We planned to stay for a few more days, but we didn't expect to meet Ice Dragon. It's our fault. Why did we go to him and the god of the Divine Kingdom? Qin Feiyang was a bit annoyed. If they hadn't gone to find Ice Dragon and the god of the Divine Kingdom in hell, none of this would have happened. What? You went to find the god of the Divine Kingdom? The old people were shocked. Not only did he look for him, little Qin even fought with him. The white-eyed wolf bared his teeth. No way. What happened? The old people were shocked. Little Qin Zi was defeated by the god of the Divine Kingdom. The white-eyed wolf said with a gloating smile. How dare you laugh at me? Who was it that kept provoking the master of the Divine Kingdom? Qin Feiyang glared at the white-eyed wolf, then turned to look at Madman, who was hiding in a corner and laughing. With a dark expression he said, Senior brother, don't laugh. You have a part to play in this. The group of old men looked at Qin Feiyang and the other two and couldn't help but shake their heads and smile bitterly. They already had a rough idea of what was going on. At that time, the white-eyed wolf and the mad scientist must have provoked the Divine Kingdom's sovereign first and angered the Divine Kingdom's sovereign. Then, the two of them hid aside and threw this trouble to Qin Feiyang. In the end, Qin Feiyang was brutally beaten up by the sovereign of the Divine Kingdom. The dominator of the Divine Kingdom is so strong? Even you don't have the strength to fight back? Ji Laoshi asked. Very strong. So we have to get rid of the Central Dynasty before he returns to the Divine Kingdom. Qin Feiyang said. Get rid of the Central Dynasty? The group of old men murmured. It wasn't easy. Boss Ji said. Let's not talk about this first. Quickly call you are out. Yes, yes, yes. The other old men also hurriedly nodded. Qin Feiyang smiled slightly and waved his hand. The monarch, Jiutian Lord, and Ji Tianyue appeared. You. The group of old men immediately surrounded her. As for the monarch and Ji Tianjun who were standing next to Ji Tianyue, the group of old men not only ignored them but also directly pushed the father and son away. As if to say, don't stand here and get in the way. The father and son were helpless. You're finally back. Do you know how much we old men have missed you all these years? Come, let us take a good look. You're so haggard. Even I feel sorry for you. You must have suffered a lot in the Sky Cloud realm all these years. Ji Yinwang, get over here and see how haggard your daughter is. If it weren't for you, would she have suffered so much in the Sky Cloud realm? Fortunately, she came back safely, otherwise, we would have killed you. The group of old men felt sorry for Ji Tianyue. But to the monarch, they were stern and didn't have a good expression. What else could the monarch do? He could only smile apologetically and admit his mistake. Ji Tianjun also smiled bitterly. Didn't many families value boys over girls? How come when it came to their family, it became a preference for girls over boys? Ji Tianyue looked at the monarch, looked at the group of old men, and said self-reproachfully, This has nothing to do with father. It's you who is unfilial and made you worry for so long. What are you talking about? In this world, is there a more sensible child than you? Your big brother is not even 1/10 of you, Ji Laoshi said. The corner of Ji Tianjuan's mouth twitched. He didn't seem to have offended anyone standing here. Why was it about him? Besides, how was he not sensible? These old men, their thinking of valuing girls over boys was a bit heavy. Looking at Ji Tianjun innocently being implicated, Ji Tianyue couldn't help but laugh. No matter what, it's good that you came back safely. Come, sit with great-grandfather. Old Ji grabbed Ji Tianyue's hand and sat down at the table. Ji Tianhua sat aside obediently. Ninth Master Ji laughed hoarsely and said, I really didn't expect that after we parted back then, the little girl from before had so many children and grandchildren now. The most important thing is that Er's descendants are all so outstanding, unlike someone who gave birth to a little playboy. Old Ji said sarcastically, glancing at Ji Tianjun from time to time. Ji Tianjun was full of helplessness. He was being attacked again, because the little playboy that old Ji was talking about was his good-for-nothing son. Qin Feiyang looked at the group of old men and said, Great-grandfathers and great-grandmothers, in fact, there is something that we have been hiding from you. What is it? The group of old men looked at him suspiciously. Qin Feiyang said, My ancestor, Qin Batian, is actually not the young man you saw. The group of old men was surprised. Crazy said, It means that the Qin Batian in the Divine Kingdom is impersonated. What? The group of old men suddenly stood up. How could it be an impersonation? What's going on? Ji Tianhua also looked at Qin Feiyang and the other two suspiciously. It's like this. The person who is impersonating my ancestor is that mysterious young man. You should also know that he is very strong. We have known each other since the ancient world. Qin Feiyang looked at Ji Tianhua and explained. Mysterious young man? Ji Tianhua was stunned, pondered for a moment and asked, You mean the young man who is listless and sleepy all day long? Yes. Qin Feiyang nodded. Why would he impersonate Batian? Ji Tianhua was puzzled. I don't know either. However, this person has no ill intentions. And he has helped us many times. Qin Feiyang said. Ji Tianjun suddenly asked, Could it be the young man who fought with me in the western continent of the Sky Cloud realm? That's him. Qin Feiyang nodded. I didn't expect it. I always thought that he was Qin Batian. What's going on? What does the real Qin Batian look like? Ji Tianjun frowned. Qin Feiyang waved his hand, and the phantom of his ancestor appeared. Everyone looked at Qin Batian's phantom. It turned out that this was the descendant of the Purple Gold Divine Dragon clan. You stinking brats, you actually kept me in the dark. The monarch shook his head and smiled bitterly. I kept it from you before to protect my ancestor. Qin Feiyang said. Hearing this, the monarch was a little unhappy and said, Do you really think that I will kill my own grandson? That's hard to say. White-Eyed Wolf said. The monarch's face darkened and asked, Then where is my grandson now? We don't know either. I asked Mu Qing to use the all-seeing eye. None of us have been where they are now. Qin Feiyang shook his head. They? The monarch was stunned. These two are my ancestors, Yi Futian said. One is the ancestor of the Qin family, and the other is the ancestor of my mother's family, the Lu family. Qin Feiyang smiled and said, What about the Eye of Reincarnation? Ji Tianjun asked. There's no need to doubt the Eye of Reincarnation. My ancestor is the owner of the Eye of Reincarnation. The ancestor of the Lu family is the owner of the Eye of Destruction. And this time, I also brought the owner of the Eye of Oblivion. Qin Feiyang smiled and said. The elders looked at each other and sighed. You're too late. Qin Feiyang was confused. What do you mean? Boss Ji said. The two kids from Mount Supreme have been taken to the Central Dynasty. 2 kids. Qin Feiyang frowned. Boss Ji sighed. The 2 human elites who have the Eye of Destruction and the Eye of Oblivion. Qin Feiyang suddenly got up and said in shock. How is that possible? Why were they taken to the Central Dynasty? This happened on the 2nd day after you left the Divine Kingdom. That morning, more than a dozen people from the Central Dynasty suddenly came to Mount Supreme and asked for the 2 kids to go to the Central Dynasty. The human sovereign had no choice but to let them take them away. Boss Ji said. Qin Feiyang and the other 2 looked at each other and couldn't help but frown. They were taken away by the people from the Central Dynasty? Wouldn't Lin Yi have to go to the Central Dynasty in the future to see her old enemy? The madman asked. What kind of clothes are these people wearing? Are they in the same group as the 3 people we met before? They don't seem to be in the same group. Those people are all wearing the same clothes. According to the human sovereign, they all have a sword pattern on their clothes. They seem to be members of the Death God Legion. Boss Ji said in a deep voice. Sword pattern. Qin Feiyang's face suddenly changed. He looked at the madman and the white-eyed wolf and said, "How is this possible? Except for Dong Yiming and the other 11 people, the others have returned to the Central Dynasty with the inner demons and big cousin. There is indeed a problem here." The madman nodded. The Death God Legion sent 5,000 people last time, but they were persuaded to go back halfway by the inner demons and Lu Jiajin. Only the deputy commander Dong Yiming secretly entered the 4 great continents with 10 members of the Death God Legion to investigate their situation. Dong Yiming and others had died in their hands. The other members of the Death God Legion had returned to the Central Dynasty with the inner demons and the white-eyed wolf. How could the Death God Legion appear in the 4 great continents? The Central Dynasty sent them again? But the time doesn't match. It takes 3 months to come from the Central Dynasty to the 4 great continents. What is going on? Wait. The second day after we left the Divine Kingdom. We left the Divine Kingdom for about 5 days in total. In other words, they haven't returned to the Central Dynasty yet. Suddenly, the madman got up abruptly and looked at Qin Feiyang and the white-eyed wolf. They must still be in the Taboo Ocean. If we pursue them now, we can definitely make it. Because Qin Feiyang had dual wills of heavenly Tao, his speed was faster than the other party. Chapter 4393. That's right. Even if they return to the Central Dynasty on the same day, it was only 3 days ago. We can definitely catch up with them. The white-eyed wolf nodded. No matter what, they couldn't let Lin Yi and Lu Xingyang's old enemy be taken to the Central Dynasty. Okay. You guys take your time to catch up. We will go after these people first. And I really have some doubts about the identity of these people. Are they members of the Death God Legion? Qin Feiyang looked at the Lord and others and said. Heaven Lord Ji said. I won't stay any longer. I will continue to cultivate in seclusion in the Black Tortoise world. Okay. The Lord nodded. Qin Feiyang waved his hand and sent Heaven Lord Ji to the Black Tortoise world. He then looked at Ji Tianyue and said, Old ancestor, you must not be discovered. You can't show up in the Divine Kingdom yet. Don't worry. I know. You guys be careful too. Don't force yourself. Ji Tianyue reminded. Qin Feiyang opened a space-time tunnel, suddenly looked at Boss Ji and others and asked, What do these Death God Legion members look like? Mu Qing can only find them with all-seeing eye if you know what they look like. We don't know. You have to ask Jizun. Boss Ji shook his head. But Jizun didn't respond to us when we sent him a message. Qin Feiyang frowned. They definitely won't respond to you. Because whether it is the divine race, the human race, or our purple gold divine dragon clan, there are people from the Central Dynasty. Boss Ji said. Why are there so many of them? Qin Feiyang looked puzzled. We don't know either. But what is certain is that these people are not wearing the Death God Legion's uniform. We all speculate that they may not be from the Death God Legion. Boss Ji said. Qin Feiyang and the other 2 looked at each other. They didn't expect this group of old people to have the same thought as them. Because they also suspected that these people were not members of the Death God Legion. Since you can't get in touch with Jizun and the others, you can check the location of the 2 human sky prides. These 2 prodigies of the human clan are now with the Death God Army. As long as we can find their location, we will be able to know the location of the Death God Army members. The monarch waved his hand and 2 figures, one male and one female, appeared. Both of them looked young. The woman was wearing a light blue long dress and looked very cold. The man was dressed in a long black robe, and there was a sinister aura between his brows. Qin Feiyang nodded and called Mu Qing out. What now? Mu Qing looked displeased. He had come to bother him as soon as he returned to the Divine Kingdom. Couldn't he just let him train in seclusion quietly for a while? The situation is urgent. Qin Feiyang briefly explained the situation. What? Mu Qing's expression changed slightly, and he quickly activated his all-seeing eye. This matter really couldn't be neglected. A moment later, Mu Qing raised his eyebrows, looked at Qin Feiyang, and shook his head. I have found the location of these two people, but it won't be of much help in chasing the Death God army members. Why? Everyone was puzzled. Because these two people are in a spatial divine item. So we still need to know the appearance or name of the Death God army members. Mu Qing said. The madman frowned. So we still need to find the Jizun of the human clan? No. Qin Feiyang's eyes suddenly lit up. Now we can find the Great Venerable and the others. Yeah. The Great Venerable and the others have already formed an alliance with us. And they have been at Mount Supreme all year round. They must have seen the Death God army members. The madman also slapped his head. He had almost forgotten about these people. I'll send them a message. The monarch spoke and took out a divine sound transmission stone. Buzz. As expected. Soon, the divine sound transmission stone reacted, following which the image of a black-haired old man appeared. Who else could it be but the Great Venerable of the human clan? At this moment, through the image, one could see that the Great Venerable was standing alone in a secret room, seemingly very vigilant. When did you guys come back? Looking at Qin Feiyang and the others standing beside the monarch, the Great Venerable was extremely surprised. Not long ago. Senior, let's catch up when we have time. Now let's ask you something. 3 days ago, the Death God army members that appeared at Mount Supreme. Did you see them with your own eyes? Qin Feiyang said. Yes. At that time, I was beside the Jizun. The Great Venerable nodded. That's great. What do they look like? Qin Feiyang was pleasantly surprised and asked. The Great Venerable waved his hand, and 12 figures appeared. There were men and women, old and young, and they were really wearing the Death God army's uniform. Mu Qing, quickly investigate. Qin Feiyang urged. Mu Qing nodded. While Mu Qing was investigating the whereabouts of these 12 people, the Great Venerable looked at Qin Feiyang suspiciously and asked, What are you guys planning to do? Of course, we're going to chase after them. The Eye of Destruction and the Eye of Oblivion must not fall into the hands of the Central Dynasty. Qin Feiyang said. Chase. The Great Venerable was taken aback and asked, Is it too late to chase after them now? It's too late. You forgot that I have 2 wills of the heavenly Tao. Qin Feiyang said with a smile. Yes. The Great Venerable patted his head. He really forgot about this matter. Then he pondered for a while and said, If you guys want to chase after them, I hope you can show mercy to those 2 disciples. I know. We won't hurt them. Qin Feiyang smiled slightly. He only wanted the battle soul, not the lives of those 2. And he also planned to let Lin Yi compete with her old enemy fairly, just like Dong Zhengyang and Ji Shaoyi. Found them. Mu Qing exclaimed at this time, but then frowned and said in a deep voice, But there is a problem. These people went to the Central Dynasty separately. Separately? Qin Feiyang was taken aback. Yes. The most important thing is, you also know that if the other party hides in the spatial divine object, then I can only see the scene inside the spatial divine object, but not the world outside. So now, I can't judge whose spatial divine object those 2 are in? Mu Qing said. That's troublesome. The white-eyed wolf's eyes sank. It seems that these people are also very smart. They know that we have the Eye of Oblivion and can find their whereabouts, so they deliberately scattered, making it difficult for us to judge. But no matter how troublesome it is, we have to chase after them. Even if we have to chase them one by one, we have to get these 2 back. After Qin Feiyang finished speaking, he looked up at the great sage and said, You tell Jizun not to act rashly. Wait for me to come back and deal with these people from the Central Dynasty. After that, he turned off the voice transmission stone, rolled up Mu Qing, the madman and the white-eyed wolf, and rushed into the space-time tunnel. Why don't we also change our appearance and follow to help? The king looked at the group of old men and said, It's useless. There is only one Mu Qing. Even if we know the escape route of the other party, it will be difficult to catch up with them. After all, they may change their route at any time. Moreover, we don't have dual wills of heavenly Tao. Our speed is no different from these people, so we can only rely on Qin Feiyang and the others. Boss Ji shook his head. Taboo ocean. The wind whistled and huge waves surged. The entire sky was dark and looked particularly depressing. Qin Feiyang and the others walked out of the space-time tunnel and immediately activated the moment of time and dual wills of heavenly Tao. They rushed into the taboo ocean like lightning. They really came to the taboo ocean again. Not long after Qin Feiyang and the others disappeared at the end of the ocean, a sea beast emerged from the water and muttered to itself before sinking into the sea and disappearing. In the blink of an eye, a few days passed. In the sky above the ocean, it was a middle-aged man in a black robe. He was like a bolt of lightning, and there was a pattern of a sharp sword on his chest. Roar! Suddenly, accompanied by a roar, a sea beast rushed out of the water and blocked in front of him. The middle-aged man was shocked and hurriedly stopped. Don't be nervous. I am ordered to inform you that Qin Feiyang, Mu Qing, the madman, and the white-eyed wolf have entered the taboo ocean. They should be chasing after you. After the sea beast finished speaking, it did not give the middle-aged man a chance to ask and disappeared into the ocean. The middle-aged man's eyes trembled as he turned to look at the void behind him and muttered, "Is this the all-seeing eye?" Sure enough, nothing can escape the prying eyes of the all-seeing eye. On the same day, the other 11 people also encountered a sea beast one after another. These sea beasts were all there to inform them of the situation. Mu Qing had been using the all-seeing eye to track the whereabouts of the 12 people, so she saw this scene clearly. What's wrong? Qin Feiyang and the others were surprised. Mu Qing said, the sea beasts of the taboo ocean are actually informing these people. What? The white-eyed wolf immediately looked down at the ocean below, killing intent flashing in his eyes. These sea beasts, are they so reckless? Mu Qing said again. And they seem to be acting on orders? Acting on orders? Qin Feiyang and the others frowned. To be able to control the sea beasts of the taboo ocean, it must be an extraordinary existence. But who could it be? Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed as he transmitted his voice. Uncle, do you know the situation of the taboo ocean? I know a little. Why? Heavenly Lord Ji, who was in seclusion in the Black Tortoise world, heard this and asked suspiciously. Qin Feiyang thought to himself, is there a particularly powerful existence in the taboo ocean? Yes. The sea beasts of the taboo ocean are all very powerful. Especially the king of the underworld. He claims to be the ruler of the taboo ocean and rules over all the sea beasts of the taboo ocean. He also has a dozen powerful sea beasts that have mastered the will of heaven under his command. However, this king of the underworld never enters the 4 great continents, so there are very few people who mention him. Heavenly Lord Ji transmitted his voice. King of the underworld. Qin Feiyang murmured. King of the underworld? The frenzy, the white-eyed wolf, and Mu Qing looked at him suspiciously. Uncle said that there's an existence called the King of the Underworld in the taboo ocean who rules over this ocean, so I suspect that these informers should be related to this King of the Underworld. Qin Feiyang guessed. He's courting death. The frenzy smiled ferociously, looked down at the ocean below, and shouted, all the sea beasts below, listen up. Go and tell the King of the Underworld to mind his own business, or else I won't be polite to him. Splash. Huge waves immediately rose in the ocean below. The sea beasts hiding in the ocean were in an uproar. Chapter 4394. Looking at the rolling waves, Qin Feiyang's eyes flickered as he said, I suddenly thought of an idea that might allow us to catch those people faster. What idea? The madman, white-eyed wolf, and Mu Qing looked at him in confusion. Didn't this king of the underworld claim to be the ruler of the taboo ocean? Let's go ask him for help. Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed. Ask him for help? Don't joke around. He's already informing these people. He's obviously on the Central Dynasty's side. How can he cooperate with us? The madman said. If he doesn't cooperate, we'll kill him. Qin Feiyang sneered. The madman was slightly taken aback before he laughed. Makes sense. I just don't know if this king of the underworld is far from here. If it's too far, we won't have time to find him. Qin Feiyang shook his head. Won't we know if we catch a sea beast and ask? The madman laughed and immediately swooped down into the sea below. Qin Feiyang and the other two also stopped in the sky. Roar. Not long after, accompanied by an angry roar, the madman grabbed a mountain-sized manatee and rushed out of the sea. What are you doing? Let me tell you, this is the taboo ocean. The manatee's voice was like a bell, deafening. But in its huge eyes, there was a fear that couldn't be dispelled. We don't even put the central dynasty in our eyes, let alone your taboo ocean. Behave yourself. The madman punched the manatee's head. The manatee immediately cried out in pain as stars appeared in its head. Let me ask you, where is the king of the underworld? The white-eyed wolf asked. The manatee was taken aback and immediately looked at Qin Feiyang and the other three with vigilance. They actually asked about the whereabouts of the king of the underworld? They definitely didn't have good intentions. You don't want to say? The white-eyed wolf's eyes flashed with killing intent as he punched the manatee's abdomen. With a miserable cry, the sea of qi shattered on the spot. Subsequently, the white-eyed wolf looked at Qin Feiyang and laughed cruelly. Little Qinzi, control it and read its memories. All right. Qin Feiyang nodded. Control me? Reading my memories? When Manatee heard this, his pupils suddenly shrank and he hurriedly roared. I'll talk as long as you spare my life. I think it's more reliable to read your memories. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. A puppet imprint appeared and entered the manatee's body like lightning. This manatee only had the cultivation of a peak dominator. Qin Feiyang was able to easily take control of it. Then he began to read its memories. Of course, useless memories were ignored and only valuable memories were read. A moment later, Qin Feiyang waved his hand, and the puppet imprint dissipated. He didn't make things difficult for the manatee, and directly let it go. How is it? White-eyed wolf asked. These sea beasts are indeed related to the king of the underworld. And last time, when we were chasing Dong Hanzong, the king of the underworld intervened. As for the king of the underworld's lair, it is located in the center of the taboo ocean, on an island called the King of the Underworld Island. With my speed, it will take about 3 days to reach it. Qin Feiyang said. 3 days isn't too far, right? Madman laughed cruelly. Qin Feiyang nodded and looked at Mu Qing. How long will it take for us to catch up with the person we are chasing now? You have 2 wills of the heavenly Tao, so the time can be shortened by a lot. Mu Qing pondered for a moment and said, about half a day. All right. Let's catch up with this person first, then go to the king of the underworld island. Qin Feiyang swept up the 3 of them and activated 2 wills of the heavenly Tao in momentary time, breaking through the sky like lightning. In the blink of an eye, half a day passed. Under the guidance of Mu Qing, they finally felt a powerful aura in the sky above the sea. But at the same time, the middle-aged man in front also sensed the aura of Qin Feiyang and the others. His face changed drastically as he turned his head to look at the void behind him and said in shock, how can they be so fast? This is 2 wills of the heavenly Tao. At that moment, he restrained his aura and changed his direction. If he thought that restraining his aura would work, then he was too naive. Because Mu Qing's all-seeing eye was not tracking one's aura, but directly tracking one's body. This person actually changed his direction in an attempt to escape our pursuit. It seems that he has not experienced the power of my all-seeing eye. Mu Qing's face was full of ridicule as she constantly directed Qin Feiyang to change his direction. About a few hundred breaths later, they finally saw the middle-aged man in front. The distance between the 2 sides was only tens of thousands of miles. Tens of thousands of miles was not a distance at all for Qin Feiyang and the others. Hey, stop quickly, you can't escape. The white-eyed wolf said. The middle-aged man's face was gloomy and his heart was terrified to the extreme. Why was he so unlucky? They had divided into 12 groups. Why was Qin Feiyang and the others the first to chase after him? Are you disobedient? The white-eyed wolf's eyes surged with killing intent. What do you want? I am a member of the Death God Army of the Central Dynasty. The middle-aged man roared. He wanted to use the fierce name of the Death God Army to scare Qin Feiyang and the others. The white-eyed wolf raised the corner of his mouth and asked, then are you a member of the Death God Army or a commander? A member. But even if I am a member, I am not someone you can provoke. If you know what's good for you, get out of here. The middle-aged man shouted without looking back. Ha ha! Even Dong Yiming, the deputy commander of the 10th team, died in our hands, let alone a small member like you. The white-eyed wolf laughed and his words were full of sarcasm. What? Dong Yiming died in the hands of these people? No wonder we couldn't find Dong Yiming's whereabouts in the past few days in the 4 great continents. The middle-aged man's eyes trembled and he ran away in panic. But no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't get rid of Qin Feiyang and the others. On the contrary, the distance between them was getting closer and closer. Because Qin Feiyang had 2 wills of the heavenly Tao, his speed was naturally not something the middle-aged man could compare to. Can you stop chasing me? I didn't offend you, why are you chasing me? The middle-aged man was about to cry. You didn't offend us, but 3 days ago, you took away 2 human prodigies from Mount Supreme. You must leave these 2 behind with us, Qin Feiyang said. How do you know about this? The middle-aged man was shocked. They had warned the Supremes of the human race not to tell anyone about this. Could it be that the Supremes of the human race had tipped off Qin Feiyang and the others? The Supremes of the human race had betrayed the divine kingdom? Qin Feiyang said, one of them has the eye of destruction, and the other has the eye of oblivion. They have long been our prey. How do you know that they have the most powerful battle soul? The middle-aged man was shocked again. We can find out about Jiang Yunshuang, Jiang Zishan, Jiang Xing of the God race and Ji Shaoi of the purple gold divine dragon race. How can we not find out about these 2 prodigies from Mount Supreme? But speaking of which, we have to thank you. Ever since we killed Jiang Yunshuang and the others, the 2 prodigies of Mount Supreme have been carefully protected by the Supremes of the human race. We couldn't find a chance to do anything to them. But I didn't expect that you would take them out of Mount Supreme. Isn't this the same as giving us a chance? Qin Feiyang laughed mockingly. Damn it. The middle-aged man clenched his fists. He didn't expect these people to already have their eyes on these 2. While they were talking, Qin Feiyang had already caught up with him. Immediately, he left behind Madman, White-Eyed Wolf and Mu Qing, and directly stepped in front of the middle-aged man. The middle-aged man looked at Qin Feiyang, who was standing in the air in front of him, and immediately stopped with a face full of fear. Behind, Madman and the other 2 also surrounded him. You can't kill me, the middle-aged man roared. Qin Feiyang turned to face the middle-aged man and said playfully, give me a reason why I can't kill you. They are now in my spatial divine item. If you dare to make a move, I will immediately self-destruct and take them to hell with me. At that time, you will never be able to obtain their battle souls. The middle-aged man laughed sinisterly. Qin Feiyang and the others looked at each other in surprise. So lucky? Chasing the first person and completing the mission. But was it that easy? Could it be that he was scaring them? Then self-destruct. White-Eyed Wolf said. What? The middle-aged man looked at White-Eyed Wolf in shock. He actually wanted him to self-destruct? Why? You don't dare? I think those 2 human race prodigies aren't in your spatial divine item at all. Maybe you don't even have a spatial divine item on you. White-Eyed Wolf sneered. The middle-aged man suddenly panicked. This scene was clearly seen by Qin Feiyang and the others. He was really putting on a show to scare them. You think I don't dare? I will self-destruct right now. The middle-aged man roared as a destructive aura rushed out from his body. Humph. Madman snorted coldly as the all-evil sword appeared and shot toward the middle-aged man like a bolt of lightning. You want to stop me from self-destructing with a mere divine art? The middle-aged man smiled disdainfully. Strands of power of laws surged out like a tide toward the all-evil sword. Divine art? Madman was stunned. Qin Feiyang, White-Eyed Wolf, and Mu Qing were also stunned. He actually dared to say that the all-evil sword was a divine art? This person is too blind. Boom. With a loud bang, the all-evil sword directly destroyed the middle-aged man's power of laws, and then pierced through his lower abdomen, leaving a fist-sized hole with blood gushing out. How is this possible? The middle-aged man was shocked and his face was filled with disbelief. Are you surprised? Are you surprised? To think that a mere deity technique could destroy your power of law so effortlessly, said Yi Futian. Madman sneered. The middle-aged man's eyes trembled. The facts had proven that this was not a divine art, but some kind of heaven-defying killing technique. Now it was really difficult for him to self-destruct. In fact, he was not bluffing. He really wanted to self-destruct because he was in the Central Dynasty and had left his divine soul to protect his life. Even if he self-destructed, it would not be a big deal. The reason why he did not self-destruct and used it to threaten Qin Feiyang and the others was actually to buy time for his companions to escape to the Central Dynasty. However, he did not expect the all-evil sword to be so powerful that it could instantly shatter his Sea of Qi. If his Sea of Qi was shattered, how could he self-destruct? If he could not self-destruct, he would fall into the hands of these people. Then, even if he left his divine soul in the divine kingdom, it would be meaningless because these people would not kill him easily. Why is he so stupid? Why did he threaten them? Wouldn't it be over if he self-destructed? Isn't he just getting caught in his own trap? The middle-aged man was filled with regret. You're tuning in to the Limei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.